I'm basically it's the marriage ceremony.
Let me sit.
We're not gonna.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to reconvene the Board of Supervisors June 2nd meeting and thank Mr. Whitson for running the day for me.
It was a party. You missed it.
I know, I'm sorry I missed it, but I'm sure it was in good hands. All right, so tonight we have multiple public hearings. We are going to start out with the public hearing for Hopper and Boating. And Michelle, if you will get us started, that would be great.
Yes, ma'am. The applicants have requested a special exception for an accessory dwelling unit for their property located at 13337 Crest Hill Road. It's identified by tax map number 1421A. The property is zoned agricultural and is 155.73 acres in size. The proposed accessory dwelling unit is for their mother. It will roughly be around 768 square feet, and it's located roughly around 117 feet from their main dwelling. During this process, we discovered that the main dwelling had never obtained an operational permit from the health department. They did have their final building inspection, but had never received a certificate of occupancy. This all since the initial application has been resolved. VDOT commented that the proposed use does not add any additional traffic volume, and they offer no comments. The health department records indicate that the septic is a 5-bedroom septic. Their house has 3 bedrooms. If they wish to tie into the existing septic, then they need a modification permit to do so. Otherwise, they just do a standard permit process through the health department. There were questions regarding the well, but the owners actually had the water tested back in February, and it was clear and good for potable use. The Planning Commission held their public hearing at their May 21st meeting. There were no speakers for this item, and the Planning Commission recommended approval by a vote of 6-0. The applicant is present if the board has any questions.
Thank you. Ms. Boating, do you want to talk to the board at all before I open the public hearing? Nope, you're good. All right. I will open the public hearing and try to keep comments to 3 minutes per speaker, please. So anyone wishing to speak with regards to this public hearing only, please be recognized, come up and give us your name and your district.
Highly controversial.
It is. All right. I don't have anybody in the courtroom. Anyone on Zoom wishing to speak, please raise your Zoom hand. All right. No Zoom hand. I will close the public hearing and bring it back to the board. Given this application and how clean and everything they needed is in there. Everybody at the Planning Commission liked it. I'd like to go ahead and make a motion to approve #24-11-01.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I would just echo your sentiments, Madam Chairman, and that it did check all the boxes required at the Planning Commission for an ADU, and certainly the size of the property mitigates any concerns that neighbors might normally have. So it was an excellent application, and similarly had no comments.
All right. There's no other comments.
I would just say that as people think about these types of uses, I think the rules are pretty stringent, and if you can meet them, I hope that my colleagues and I will look upon those applications favorably, because like the Ridgeview property we looked at not too long ago, it's exactly what we want to help aging people, elderly people age in place and help children or older children find their way back to Rappahannock County. So I really like these.
I do too. All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Thank you.
you.
All right, moving next to the ordinance amendment, food and beverage meals tax rate. Same, go ahead.
I'll give a very quick introduction and pull up the ordinance amendment. It's a very simple amendment. The board has talked about this for quite some time during your budget meetings. The code section is here right before you, section 15158 of the county code, levy of tax. In addition to all other taxes imposed by law, a 6% tax is hereby levied on the amount paid by any purchaser who. So it just changes 4 to 6. It could change 4 to any other number less than 6 that the board desired after you hear from the public and consider the amendment.
Excellent. Okay, so same as last time, 3 minutes per speaker. If you wish to speak, please be recognized and give us your name and your district.
No controversy.
Hello, everybody. My name is Allie Dore, Jackson District. I will keep it short and sweet. Everyone's heard what I had to say, and I think everyone's pretty well aware of my stance on this. Again, short and sweet. If there was any other circumstance where there was a recommendation to raise taxes by 50%, it would be looked at as outrageous. There would be uproar, and it would not pass. So instead of looking at the small numbers of a raise from 4% to 6%, look at it in a bigger picture of a 50% raise on taxes and the implications it would have on small businesses. I strongly advise you to reconsider such an increase, and that is all I have to say. Thank you for being here and for what you do for us.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sally.
Yes, sir.
Good evening, Deke Deacon, Stonewall District. Came here last year with the same opposition. Nothing's changed. Your opinion may have changed. It may have already been set. I hope it's not. I hope you're open to some suggestions. We operate a pretty small business. We can't bury these costs in a large guest bill. No alcohol, no $100 tabs. It's tough to pass this on. We're already at the limit of a lot of increases in our sales. We actually had to move down to, for the 5-week interim, down to Renaissance Fair in Lake Anna to generate some funds because of the volume. We talked about it last year. We're facing a moving target. We've got everybody headed to another destination. This is going to make it even less appealing for people to stop. You couple that with the sign stealing, trashing, removal. I don't see a very friendly small business environment. I'd be curious if Miss Donahue still owned the tavern, if she would be in favor of this. But I'm going to urge you to listen to the folks here, respect the efforts of small business, and say no. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Terry Sutton. I live in the Piedmont District. I do not own a business, but I am a resident. I have, however, my entire life in finance as a CFO and Chief Operating Officer. And I appreciate the problem you all are trying to solve, but I disagree with the way we're going about it. Essentially, our small businesses are carrying the burden of fixing our budget deficit that should be spread across the entire county. And I understand that's controversial too. There are a lot of creative things we can do to protect seniors who don't have a lot of money and limit their real estate taxes. Fairfax County has a fantastic model. I have a suggestion. You all are doing a bang-up job, but you don't have a lot of time. Put together a citizen task force. Each of you pick someone from both extremes to represent that area. Put us all in a room together, and maybe we can come up with some recommendations that address our budget shortfalls in an equitable way that doesn't hurt our local businesses, doesn't hurt people who can't afford to pay more taxes, doesn't overburden those of us that can pay more taxes. So that's my suggestion. I hope you'll consider it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Terry.
Anyone else? All right, not seeing anyone in the courtroom. If there's anyone on Zoom wishing to speak with regards to this public hearing, please raise your Zoom hand. All right, no Zoom hand. I will close the public hearing and open it up to the board.
Well, this has made me wildly unpopular, and I understand that. I've been thinking about this a lot, and this to me is a big discussion about education, and we as a county will continue to have this discussion. I'm going to say that this is the first time that I have supported a tax increase since I've been on the Board of Supervisors. I'm not running again, and I've been fortunate not to have to do it. This tax burden will be spread out in a way that I've never done it across all the levers that we can pull insofar as we can pull them. We've raised real estate taxes, not property taxes, but real estate taxes 3%. We've levied a cigarette tax for the first time ever, which neighboring counties do. And we have, unfortunately, advertised this, as Ally mentioned, as a 50% raise on meals and lodging, which I did not originally want to do, because I am a small business owner and I understand exactly what it does. I truly do get that. This is the beginning of a larger discussion about what we're going to do to fund our schools because of required salary increases and health care increases. I will not be participating in that conversation moving forward, but it is going to get tough. And I think the quickest way we can see Rappahannock urbanize and get really expensive is to lose our school. I don't know what the silver bullet is or the silver buckshot, I'm not sure. But here, at least, spreading out the tax burden like we've done has made at least me, sort of, as I support it, unpopular, and I get that. We don't have a whole lot in our industrial base as Rappahannock County. When you look at other counties that are our size, they have other things that they do that allow them to levy a BPOL tax, a machinery and tools tax, mercantile gross receipts tax. We don't do those things. We don't have those levers. We do have them available to us, but we don't do it in this county. We're looking at having to increase our courthouse security, which we've had to do for 50 years and we have not done. We have our hands tied in a way where we do have to do something there, and that will result in a real estate tax increase. When we levy real estate tax increases, it disproportionately falls on the fixed income and lower income people of this county. That is a fact. That's just what happens. This 3% real estate tax that we've done, which is 2 pennies, and each penny equals about $195,000, will disproportionately be felt by those folks who live paycheck to paycheck for real, especially when the assessment hits. One of my constituents, Terry Dixon, made that point several weeks ago at a meeting, and he's correct. That is true. When the assessment comes through every 6 years, there are pockets that it hits, and it affects them just sort of aggressively. We do, the first year that I was on this board, the Commissioner of the Revenue, Mary Graham, did a fabulous job in expanding our tax abatement program, at least for a certain portion of our population. And I would encourage anybody who could qualify that to look into that. Ms. Graham has mentioned that people are sort of reluctant to take assistance or just to not have to pay because it might come from strings attached to the local government, but it does not. So I just want to say that I'm the only person on this board who went to the Rappahannock County Public Schools. I'm the only person, Ms. Smith grew up here, but I'm the only person who grew up here. I really understand what this is doing. This is my home. And I understand how a meals and lodging tax will affect people who come to this county. I do get it, I really do. This has been a hard budget season. And I think we've had some challenging conversations, and I think they've been good conversations. But I see it as the beginning, because I see it as the beginning of what it is that we're going to do when we have to pay for fixing our roof. What are we going to do when we have to pay for our sewage treatment plant at the school? What are we going to do when we have to buy a bus every year and they keep getting more and more expensive because the state tells us that every October we have a lot more than we really do. That's kind of what happens when they take their snapshot of how many daily riders we have and determine how many buses we need. There are so many drivers that are sort of out of our control. We hired a lobbyist and we spent, I don't know, tens of thousands of dollars trying to tell Richmond that they need to send more money than they're sending. I have seen a trend on the level of the state to put more onus on the locality in terms of getting the locality to pay more. And that's exactly what they're doing. So, that's just a long-winded way of saying that I hear everybody, especially those folks in my district who a real estate tax increase will truly affect because they're having a hard time paying for their energy bill. And I have those people, and I hear from them. So I just want to thank everybody for the public participation, genuinely. And I think this is a tough conversation. The last thing I want to add is that Rappahannock used to kind of have some level of a tourism thing in terms of county government. If we raise this meals and lodging to 6%, at 5% on the lodging side, is that correct? It's reserved for tourism dollars? Or on
Yes.
the meal side?
Lodging.
And we cannot use that money for anything other than tourism. We have to use it for tourism. We have some at 3%.
It's
Confusing.
two, let's see, 3, 4, and 5 are reserved for tourism for lodging only taxes.
So that means,
Anything but 5 is, yeah.
as anybody, which means that we will then have money that we are required and is restricted and required to be used on tourism efforts, which I am hoping will spur a larger conversation about how we can come together as a community to help small businesses, which we desperately need to support and which we desperately need more of. And hopefully this will force that hand a little bit in terms of getting that going. Anyway, thanks for humoring me and letting me go on.
Anyone else?
So, I'm gonna say it again, I never know where to start. I wanna say that the words that spoke to me the loudest at the last public, comment, last hearing a couple weeks ago were yours, a 50% tax increase. It certainly did make me think of things, through, in a different way. So I want to say a couple of things. I don't think it's prudent at all to use general fund money, one-time money, on reoccurring costs. I'm going to just go on record saying I think that is a bad practice. I heard the 50% increase statement. I really listened to that. Also, you know, I nicknamed, the paper picked it up, and I nicknamed Mr. Carney's, I referenced the firebomb. I don't know if any of you read that. So I don't have a nickname for Mr. Whitson's letter. Give me another day or two and I might come up with one. But what Mr. Carney's firebomb and what Mr. Whitson's letter both have in common is they really started some great conversations in our county. And for that, I am grateful to both of them. I really, truly appreciate that. So, with that said, the conversation that Mr. Whitson has started has gained a lot of support and interest from many of my constituents. And to that end, I wonder what then would it look like if we didn't raise the meals and lodging tax from 4% to 6%? What then do my colleagues here say, what would the next move be? Because I know that for me, if we chose not to do that, I think I'd want to hear it from them, but I think it means we'd then have to spend money from our general fund, which I've already stated I don't think is very wise. But I would be open to doing that, and I would be open to considering that, knowing that Mr. Whitson has gained the support. He has a few folks behind him to maybe give him this next year to have a good conversation with the town. Maybe we then engage some other folks on problem solving. What would the next steps be? And of course, I've made it no secret whatsoever that I'm all for supporting our tourism industry. People don't know you're there if they don't know they're there. They're not going to stop if they don't know you're there. So I definitely, I will not back off of my desire to invest in some of our county tourism. I think I mentioned not too long ago, I'm aware of a grant that could change something as little as $10,000 to $30,000. And I work very closely with another department where I've seen less than $30,000 do great things for a tourism industry. So I share all that just to hear what others have to say, and what it might look like, and get behind Mr. Whitson as he continues to work on his relationship and see what progress that he could do. I say all of that somewhat cautiously, knowing that March of next year could mean, if we haven't figured something out, could mean this exact same conversation with no other recourse but to pull those levers. And the only other thing I would add is I have spoken to a small business owner who's owned businesses in other counties, and she, God bless her, she told me, she said, I get it, I feel for you, I get it. And she didn't feel like it would stop anyone from purchasing. I know it doesn't stop me. Since we started this conversation, I've really paid attention. Every time I've gone someplace and I've bought something, I've paid attention. And I will also tell you, the thing that has started to stick in my craw is when I pay that, not only I'm paying it, they're passing it on to me, but I'm dropping it in a neighboring county's till. So I know that I have been definitely more intentional the last month and a half to make sure that if I am going to pay 4% tax or 6% tax, I want it to stay in Rappahannock County, and I want it to support the school from where I just came for their last little hurrah, their little athletic sports ceremony thing. So that's where my brain is at the moment, and I just want to hear from everyone else.
I think no one will be surprised that my mind hasn't changed much since the last time we met. Sperryville, which is located in the district which I represent, collects and turns over to the county about 40% of the meals and lodging taxes for the whole county, which is wild when you think that it comes out of a little village. That's a lot of money. So I just, knowing that Sperryville gives us so very much, and that businesses in that village are already being overburdened with the doubling of the sewer rates in the very near future, it's tough. It's tough to ask this of businesses, and you all know I was not in favor of it. it's great what's going on with businesses in Sperryville and to see the kind of cooperative environment that's fostered so that businesses can have shared space from which they launch their endeavors. The upshot is that there's still quite a bit of commercial space empty down that end of the county. And if you're already having an issue and not looking attractive to businesses as a location, why would you adopt policies that are more prohibitive to the business environment? It makes them a tougher sell. And some of these are large properties that have been vacant for years. And we really need to be an attractive county in which to locate your business. Most people know that I always like to bring up Pigeon Forge and Gatlinburg as an example of what we don't want to become.
Right.
We want to stay a good mix of residents and businesses. We want to be business friendly. We want to be resident friendly. We want to have a vibrant community where the two are compatible and respectful of each other. I know you get tired of hearing me say there's a sweet spot where quality of life and tourism intersect, and that's where we want to live. And I don't want to have policies that would give up the small business dream, but make it, if you're turning over these small lots where people are going to have a hard time continuing to pay their taxes, and they're in, as they're in Piedmont District, highway commercial zoning, and you're making it a less friendly environment for small businesses, and you're doubling sewer rates, it is a triple threat. You're driving people away, small homeowners and small businesses, and you are going to be attractive to the kind of large businesses, which we don't want. I don't think any of us want to look like that. It's food for thought, and I know all of our districts are different, but that's what I see down in Piedmont District. I think it's always interesting to talk about getting citizen groups together, and anyone that knows my history on this board knows that I have talked about the revitalization committee, which the county put together at one point in time, and that document is sadly outdated and could use some work. It would be most logical to take that up after the revision to the comp plan, which hopefully we should have wrapped up toward the end of this year. And if there's people that want to talk about finances, we as a board would have to make that decision, whether we wanted to empanel a group of people to have that discussion, but it seems to be most sensible to have it in a revitalization way. People hate the economic development term, and that was learned early on. Revitalization is the key word. I would just say, as I did last time, that the county is accruing interest on the broadband project in Warren County. I know you all hate hearing about it, but it is $20,000 a month, and that is no paltry sum. Yep. And we hear it's ours for the taking whenever we want it. And why can't we just recognize that revenue and avoid it increasing this? It almost offsets. And it would be something, was there something we should be aware of?
It's the broadband authorities.
The broadband authorities, yeah.
The boards.
Well, hopefully those three people that know the board members well from the broadband authority would be of a mind to turn the money back over to the county.
I hear they have a good relationship.
So there's that money, and maybe not all of it is the board's, but a quarter of it should be the board's based on what we paid in, and that we paid in first. And then I think it's always interesting, when I was listening to Ms. Comer speak, what had occurred to me is that a part of this, it's almost like when we learned that if you order your groceries online, the county would realize tax revenue from that. I don't know if a lot of people know that, but if you order your groceries online, the county gets the sales tax from your grocery order. Whereas if you go in person to a neighboring locality and shop in person, then that locality collects the tax revenue. So if you have a strong urge to help Rappahannock County and you want to be able to spend your money in a way up front that helps us in the long run, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Bonnie, but I think I'm right. If you order online, your groceries online, and please shop local first. Please shop local first. But if it's something that you can't get in the county, please order online and go pick it up. And we will realize that revenue. It's money, passively putting money in our pockets in a very simple way that maybe people could be encouraged to do. And maybe we should take up like a by-county campaign, or campaign's not the right word, but circulate the idea of buying county, because people do take a lot of pride in their county. And I think if they saw the way that pennies that they spent locally could add up, it might encourage everyone to look at their receipts and realize the small ways that they could contribute. All that being said, I hate this tax increase, and I'm not going to vote for either one of them tonight.
Okay. Thank you.
Well said.
Thank you.
Mr. Whitson?
Go ahead.
Oh. Okay. Asked if I would do this if I still own the tavern, if I thought there was another way. I would go after that way. But we have spread the pain as best as possible for trying to pay the expenses that we are incurring as the county, and we have to have revenue to equal those expenses, or we get into trouble. So I look at this as a business, Rappahannock County being the business decision, we have to do something to pay the bills. If we had started this conversation possibly in December, we may have come up with something better by now. But we didn't, and we still have bills. And I can tell you, I just spent 2 days with the Hunt Institute that is all about schools, and nothing about schools is going to get less expensive. So every year, we're going to have this conversation. If we don't, as a county, figure out how to raise different revenue than what we're doing today. On my trip down, I stopped at a rest area and picked up the Page County, Virginia's Cabin Capital brochure. They make how much annually?
Like $1 million.
On 10% lodging tax. And they are booming over there. They chose as a county to support cabins because they needed the cabins for the event venues. And that was definitely a choice. They weren't afraid of the cabins. We have got to do something, and I'm hoping people are going to come to the comp plan meetings, because that's where the discussion really needs to start. If it's not in the comp plan, it's very hard for the board to make a decision that doesn't match with the comp plan. So I would say get involved on the comp plan meetings, which are now posted online and everywhere, I think. So as much as I don't like taxes, I don't see an option that's going to get us $250,000 to make revenues and expenses match, except for this one. And I too, and I've said this all along, don't want to take funds out of the general fund for reoccurring expenses. We've already done that with the, well, the buses were not, but every year we're going to have a bus. So we have got to get into the groove of having income for expenses that we know are coming. Go for it.
I won't rehash my my recent effort to find another revenue source. Everyone knows about that by now, so I'll leave that alone. But I do want to go back to the night that this board and the majority, not including Christine and me, adopted a budget that assumed this we'll call it a 50, I appreciate that, a 50% increase in the baseline meals and lodging tax rate. And what I said to the one school board member who was here that night, one school board member, we were up here fiddle-futzing in the weeds on questions about staff positions and teacher positions, and will you be able to do this, and will you be able to do that? That's not our job. That's the school board's job. And I asked the school board representative, tell me about your process. Tell me what you did. Did you do all this? Did you do what we're doing up here? Did you, you go out on a limb and take shots for cutting this or cutting that? Just identify one thing off the top of your head that you removed from the school budget. And to say that there wasn't really an answer there is probably an understatement. And so my point is this. The discussion here is all about revenue. And I would like to emphasize again, and I think he's dialed in by Zoom, the mayor of Washington said that I'm a part of poor planning in the county. And so I'm going to say it one more time. This is what poor planning looks like in the last 6 years. No tax increase in 6 years. We're required to have a minimum of $5 million cash on hand in the county coffers by our new policy that Bonnie Jewell worked out. We have 8, and we have no debt. So when I look at a school board member who tells me or cannot tell me what the school board did with the school budget, and we've done all this good work on the county side of the ledger, it's really hard for me to be enthused to say to restaurants and businesses in this county, well, we just need more money. Nobody, in my opinion, nobody's asking the hard questions, particularly in the school system. It is not reasonable, and I actually came up with a plan to re-equalize our tax rate, which would have just brought a penny back into play, plus school buses, would have been close to $700,000 in additional funding over last year to the school system, which in my mind is plenty, all other things being equal. And what we get instead is a 2-penny increase and then another 2% on our businesses who are going to be struggling as we enter a very uncertain economic time. And I think that we need to simplify our thinking. And last summer, I got a call from Dana Milbank, who has a house out here, writes for the Washington Post. And he called me kind of casually, and you would think I would know that when newspaper people call, they're never talking to you casually. And my wife always reminds me of that, and I always forget. But I talked to him casually, and he came out with a story. And basically, the message I left him with in the story that he had, which was a juxtaposition of Culpeper County and Rappahannock County. My mantra over and over and over again was, we are not in a position where we have to chase additional revenue. We are not in a position where we have to chase additional revenue. If we are smart with the money that we have for as few services as we provide Laura Grigsby and Floyd Grigsby and everyone else in the county, with an improving everyday EMS system that is an essential service, we invest in EMS and ask the schools to do their part to match us on fiscal restraint. We could be in a position where we have a world-class rural EMS system, an excellent school system, and we don't drive people out of the county because we tax them away. And we keep small businesses, whether they're in Washington or Sperryville or Flint Hill or Amosville, without that added pressure, particularly at a tough economic time. So I know I'm the bad guy when it comes to schools. I hate being in that position. I'm a product of public education. So I believe in public education. I just believe that sometimes it feels like we do our part on the county side, and every year we get put in a spot and it gets passed on to you. My proposal, which was not accepted, would have gotten the school significant additional money. And it's their choice, it's the school board's choice to figure out what to do with the funding they receive. And that funding, by the way, would have been $10.7 million, which is close to 60% of our local tax revenue. Whether that's a high share of our local tax revenue or a moderate share of our local tax revenue, it just strikes me as pretty sufficient for a school that has declining enrollment. And I don't mean to sound harsh, but we have done our job on this board the last 6 years. And this county is in great fiscal condition. And I just expect the same discipline out of the school board and the school superintendent and the people who work there. And it's not to say that I don't believe in children. I have 2 of them. They're not in those schools, which people are always quick to point out, and that's fine. We all have a choice. I believe in that school. I believe in investing in it. It is important to invest in it. It's just, I think we have invested sufficiently to date, and I think that the school system, including the school board members and administration, need to ask fundamental questions about how the school operates so that next year we'll come back with a very tight county budget and they come back and say, we don't need any more money, and we won't be putting the businesses of Flint Hill and Sperryville and Amosville in a pickle at a really bad time. What Dana Milbank said in his article in conclusion, my daughter read it and she said, Dad, did he call you simple-minded? He said that to keep rural areas rural, to preserve rural communities, we need community leaders who have the courage to think small. And so if I'm a small thinker in this regard, I'm okay with it. And I think we all need to start thinking smaller if we want to keep Rappahannock County the way it is. And there's plenty of room for doing better by our businesses. I've said that before. I would like to get out of the way on some of these zoning things that preclude businesses from getting going. I just don't think a meals and lodging tax makes any sense at all right now to put on our businesses. Going forward, I'm committed to doing whatever we can to promote tourism in the county, to help you guys out to offset, I think, this very adverse pressure being placed on you. It's unfortunate, and I regret it, and I don't support it. So there's plenty we can do better, but in the meantime, I think keeping Rappahannock County basically the way it is, not chasing additional revenue, we end up in a pretty darn good place. And this idea that, oh, well, we got to find more money somewhere this year has got to stop. We got to get over that. We're doing fine. We're doing fine. And we just got to live within our means. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say, I don't want a roller coaster. So when I say I'm supporting tourism, I definitely don't want a roller coaster. I just want more people at New Iberia. I just want more people at before and after. I don't ever think it's a good time to raise taxes. So I think if you start from that point, you have to start from that point. It's never a good time to raise taxes. I'll maintain that it does bother me to hit our general fund. And then I'm always going to be a staunch supporter of our school system. We don't need to rehash that conversation. We're probably all tired of having it. We've been having it since March. But, you know, if we don't do this now, I'm just going to hold, when I was selling steel, you know, someone would call and ask for a quote, and I'd give them a ballpark, and then I'd say, are you going to hold my feet to the fire? And you know, the conversation would go from there. I'm going to hold my colleagues' feet to the fire. If we don't adopt this ordinance, we then have to come up with this money, and then we have less than 1 year. We have less than 1 year to be prepared for next year. And last year, during my, you know, maiden budget season, I remember saying something similar at the joint meeting between us and the school board, like, oh, it starts now. And I now know that was too late. And it was at what's considered the kickoff of season. So, yeah, we're already too late. We have to start now for next year, because we'll be having the same conversation.
I just think it's a mischaracterization to label the school board as not having done their job. They had a unanimous vote, and there are a lot of people in this county, including the ones that I grew up with, that don't really have a choice. And so those are the people that I'm voting for, are the people that really just don't have the means to choose. And I really do think that it's the fastest way to lose our county pretty quick. Because I've talked to so many people that I went to school with who didn't want to come back because they didn't want to put their kids in our schools. That's just a fact. So I think that choking their arterial life support is not a good thing. And that driver is a salary driver and is a health insurance driver. So I just disagree with Mr. Whitson here, and I think it's a mischaracterization.
Yeah, no,
I just wanted to say that.
no, it's, I don't think $10.7 million is choking anyone's lifeline at all. And,
We're not giving them that much.
you better check your math before you vote. That's exactly what you're giving them. Actually, more than that, including the school buses. So,
We can't include the school budget.
oh my gosh.
That's not part of the budget.
Oh,
We've
yeah.
already just, anyway, we can.
I just thought the article in the paper by, I think it was a young lady who was a student reporter. And I don't know if she went to public school or private school, and guess what? I don't care. I thought her writing was great either way. You know, she did a great job of covering the choices that the school board's going to make with, I think it was about $250,000 in revenue. And to me, it turned on the light bulb that the budget that Mr. Whitson had crafted was really good. It was really sharp. And that really, I believe we overfunded the schools this year. And if they're having a discussion now, and the upshot of that additional revenue is that they're going to buy another bus when they've already got two coming. And they're going to hire the CTE position, which is the fine arts position for the high school, which is a coordinator position from what I understand. I think those are two things that we should have lived without this year. And, you know, sometimes hindsight's 20/20. And, you know, we have different opinions. But I would definitely suggest in the future that the school forego decisions like that and think about, you know, the people that, as Adina Ordonez said at the school when we had the public hearing on the revised budget, I hope everybody sticks around because you need to hear from the people that are going to pay the bills. And that's the reality is that these folks are going to pay the bills for somebody else's dreams.
Christine, I want to compliment you. You've made really thoughtful remarks tonight, and Donna too. By the way, Donna, thank you. I feel a little less lonely tonight based on your comments. A little less lonely than I have in the last few days. One thing I have to remind myself, and I'll just say it publicly, I know my constituents. I know them by name. I know who they're related to. I generally know where they live, their economic situation, and my job isn't to vote the way I think I should vote. My job's to vote for, whenever possible, within reason, taking all data and other factors into account, voting in the majority, period, end of story. And sometimes it's popular and sometimes it's unpopular depending on who you talk to. But one thing I can tell you without talking to anybody, my position on the budget, on the tax rate, reflects the majority interest of my constituents, period. I know that. So while maybe the loudest voices compel some to act, at least from where I sit, representing my voting district, all the voices compel me to act, and all the voices in the majority tell me not to increase taxes significantly, and that is where I'm coming from ultimately.
Well, thank you for everyone's input. This is definitely the most difficult budget season we have had. I hope Mr. Whitson is correct and that we are good. going forward with a courthouse and trying to put furniture and other items in the courthouse that I don't want to pay 7% interest on. That's where I think the general fund is supposed to go towards. So in my mind, our money is great where it is, that is correct, but we have a future that we know we're heading into that I want us to plan for. And in my opinion, this is planning for the future. So as much as I know I will upset my friends in the restaurant industry, I'm going to move to adopt the provided ordinance amending Rappahannock County Code 151-58 levy of tax regarding food and beverage tax rates as presented or as amended to incorporate a tax rate of 6%.
I'll second.
A motion and a second. Further discussion.
It's never too late to punt. We could wait and see how things go. Vote against it tonight and re-advertise later if we have to. Once we do it, it's done. It's not too late.
What do you have in mind?
Vote it down tonight.
I know, but what,
We
Just for
could
their-
develop the broadband money coming back to us, recognize that revenue. We could, I mean, there's other sources of revenue that we can discuss. And we sometimes often exceed our projections. And we have a robust fund balance. So at the very worst, we're gambling that we're going to have a good year and we have the money to cover it. Which I know everybody's wringing their hands and saying, oh, we can't pull from our fund balance. But it's all taxpayer dollars. It's just taxpayer dollars that are already in the bank.
yep,
And frankly, it's not a lot of money in the context of how much money we have on deposit. And if it takes us a year to work through this detail, we can cover it. I think anyone knows me, knows that I am not a lavish person, and I would not be suggesting this if I thought we were going to run the county off the road into the ditch. In fact, I think if you look at the trends for the county budget, the cash on hand graph, since I joined the board, I have a very good history of heading this county in the right direction.
good for you.
And I would never do anything to put the fiscal health of this county in jeopardy. But it's a calculated risk that we can absorb. I agree that we should not often go to our fund balance to fund things, but we just did it to the tune of $300,000 this past year for life packs because we thought they would save lives in the county.
400.
400. Gonna give me a heart attack. I'm gonna need one of
No.
those life packs.
Don't joke,
So,
450.
so I just think it's a calculated risk, but we're betting on ourselves. So,
Good for you.
why not punt? Why not put it off?
Well,
Once it's done, it's done.
I can
We
make a
we
suggestion.
never lower taxes. It will never go down. It will only go up.
Well, so since I've been on the board, we've never raised taxes, so.
Correct.
In the past, but that was a mistake.
It
And
was
I
not.
said it at the time and privately, and I voted for it. But we need to pay for recurring expenses with recurring revenue, and we've been using interest from the general fund balance to pay for things that we should not be paying for. Now, we can get into a fiscal discussion about that concept, but there is no indication anywhere that anything on the school level will ever get cheaper. So if we do, and when we do realize that money from the broadband authority, we will put it to good use, just like we will put the general fund balance that we've accumulated because of federal dollars that allowed us to build a cushion on exactly what Mrs. Donahue was explaining, which is stuff for making our courthouse secure. And instead of paying interest on that money, we can just pay for it with cash because it won't be a recurring cost. So it's not as if it's just I don't want to do it. We've been doing it for 3 years. And it's not fiscally responsible to keep doing that when the state is constantly raising, under this governor, every year, 5%, 5%, 5%, 3%, 3%, that's 5 years. But that's what it's been, just add it up. I mean, that's what they're doing. They're telling the locality to come up with the money.
I'm going to call.
Anyway,
It seems like we're
that's my
entrenched.
answer.
We do.
That's
Well,
my answer.
I think,
So that's why I am where I am, and that's why I thought the whole time, I was like, all right, I'm a business owner, I get it.
We can just use interest
That's right.
on some stuff, but we're at that point where we need to move forward. That's
All right, I'm going to call for the vote. Ms. Comer,
Nay.
Ms. Smith,
Nay.
Mr. Whitson,
nay.
Mr. Carney,
Aye.
and I also.
Motion fails.
Just if I may, Madam Chair. June 10th is the next school board meeting. So the question about the buses and all of that, I really encourage you to go to the school board meeting. They will have those answers. They are the experts on that. And I'm holding feet to the fire.
I'm not scared. This isn't my first rodeo. And I do think it's funny that people say the budgets get tougher. They've always been tough as far as I'm concerned. And you know, most years pale in comparison to 2020. And that's all I'm going to say about that.
All
So-
right.
And forgive me, Madam Chairman, for saying motion fails, but I saw people looking perplexed and I wanted to
Oh, yeah. No,
clarify it
that's
for
fine.
people listening.
Thank you for that. We are now moving into the public hearing for the lodging tax rate.
All right.
Anything you want to add on
I'll
that?
just pull it up like I did the last time.
Yep.
Oh, that's the answer. Similar to this, ordinance amendment would modify section 15172, levy of tax. This is for transient occupancy tax. Would allow the board to levy up to 6% of the total room charge paid for by any transient customer. As is the case with the last public hearing, everything's been advertised as required by law, and you must hear from the public before you make a decision.
All right. Time for the public hearing, same situation, 3 minutes. If you wish to speak, please come up, give us your name and your district.
Hi, I'm Paige Flink. I live in Piedmont District, and I am a VRBO owner. And I just want to say they will not know. There's so many fees already charged at the level to the people who are coming in and renting a 6%, 4%. I just want to make sure it all comes back to the county and that we know for sure that what they're charging us as owners actually gets received here. So I think it won't matter.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paige.
Yes, sir.
John Sullivan, Hampton District. Mr. Whitson is my representative.
Definitely.
First of all, I sympathize with all of you. It's not an easy thing, and we all have our own opinions. And I want to echo what has been said earlier. I hear you, Kira, but as gets suggested, this county going forward is going to need more revenue. If you're going to have a courthouse, if you're going to worry about fire and rescue, you're going to worry about other stuff. So you really got to start thinking about that. I mean, you can't just run away from it. And I think the school, I sort of agree with you on schools, but there's still. Now, I want to throw out one data fact, and I don't want to get into a fight about the town and the county and all that stuff. As one talks about taxes, one should be reminded that there's also another tax which these people pay, and everybody pays when they go everywhere. And that's a state tax of 5.3%. Everybody pays that wherever it goes to the state, right? Many people do not realize that 1% of that comes back to the county. So not to hit raw nerves.
And I did clarify that after you left.
The Inn of Washington actually contributes a significant amount of money to this county through that tax. separate from real estate issues and all that kind of stuff. So, but I really think, I wouldn't even sort of fully comprehended this for a while. So,
Yeah.
and that 5.3%, which we can't control, when added to the 4 or 5 or 6, all of a sudden you are up to, 10 or 11. So just a data point that might be helpful.
Thank you.
Madam
good to
Chair,
know.
if I may, just,
It's a
Very-
public hearing. We're not supposed to be
Okay,
having
all right.
two-way conversations.
okay, I just, after you left today, I clarified that. I made that point. I just want you to know on sales tax and how meaningful it is coming from the town.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's it's reiterating now, there's a lot of people have the impression town doesn't pay its way, the inn doesn't pay its way, blah, blah, blah. We're not gonna get into all that now, but that is a data point that I think important.
And
Thank
I
you, sir.
agreed with you on that.
Thank you. Anyone else? Not seeing anyone in the courtroom. There are several people on Zoom. Anyone wishing to speak about this public hearing, please raise your Zoom hand. All right, not seeing a Zoom hand, I will close the public hearing and open it up to the board.
Are we able now to adjust those rates to different percentages?
Yes, you can. There are some complexities. 2 counties in the Commonwealth of Virginia have been empowered by the General Assembly to tax a combined meals and lodging from bed and breakfast. Those are Madison County and Rappahannock County. Those combined taxes are not subject to the tourism set aside that applies to lodging only. When the meals and lodging tax are aligned, it's very clear and easy for a
50/50.
company
Yeah.
to file their taxes combined. When they're separated, it practically means they're going to be separating their meals from lodging, and you will fully reserve the third, fourth, and 5th% of the lodging, which will reduce available revenue for overall general fund needs and increase revenue for tourism restricted needs. I don't know right now whether, for example, if the board set this to 6%, what that would mean to the overall general fund revenue. It could actually reduce the general fund revenue from what we get from 4%. I know that's like calculus.
No, you did a good job.
It's calculus.
Multivariable.
Are we, is a public hearing?
I was told there would be no math.
Christine.
It's closed,
Yep.
801.
Christine's right. We're talking about $270,000. We can find it.
It's not, I mean,
And in the broadband, yeah.
I think we keep seeing numbers improve. And I think that there are opportunities to go back and look for revenue and plan for future revitalization is the key word that would meet these needs. And I think if we've been linking them all these years, we should seriously pump the brakes before we think about taxing lodging at a different rate than meals.
Yeah, if you were to do that at some point in the future, it's those percentages above 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever, if you want to do what Page County is doing, where you would see the boost to general fund.
Right, yeah, I don't think, separating them at this point would be wise until we fully understand the impact. It's so little at this point. I would not be in favor of separating them.
And I do
At this
recall,
point in
we
time.
had different rates at a time, didn't we? Because
It was, I think, maybe 2 and 4 at one point in time.
And it
However, I don't think we were we weren't recognizing how the special code section only applies to us in Madison really affected things in an accounting stance. We do now.
Had to be cleaned up.
Yeah.
So, I would make a motion that we not adopt, the additional transient occupancy tax increase. Is that sufficient?
I mean, no action is needed if you're not going to do it.
I think though, if we
yeah.
don't deny it, then people's concern is that we've advertised it and held a public hearing, it could
okay.
come back at any time.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Well, it arguably could come back, not that you follow Robert's rules, but if there's a majority that denies it, the majority could reconsider it. Whoever voted in the affirmative could reconsider anytime.
Just
We're
thinking
not
about
that fast.
previous public hearings, what I remember hearing from folks is that they would sleep better at night if we actually voted it
Sure.
down, instead of just leaving it out there.
Motions are always in order.
We have a motion, do I have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second, any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote. Ms. Comer?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Whitson?
Aye.
Mr. Carney?
Aye.
And I also.
It took 2 months, but we voted unanimously.
That was great.
It's a good way to finish the season.
I mean, there's only one way to pay for the budget now.
Yep.
You better get to work.
Yep,
Right.
interest,
No.
logged in interest.
All right, if anybody
I got
is
ideas.
like ready to leave, they can do that now, but we're moving into the $3 courthouse upgrade fee, which will probably take 5 minutes.
Yes, the circuit court clerk brought to our attention that there was a fee that could be assessed to cases in court that we weren't charging. In order to do that, we needed to consult with the Virginia Department of General Services. They came to our county, I performed a self-evaluation, they came to our county, inspected our courthouse, and validated that it does not meet current standards. Not meeting current standards means that this board could add an additional $3 fee to each case with some restrictions as listed in the ordinance. And this, while not identified in code, my understanding in conversation with the folks at the state is that you can charge this so long as you are using the money to upgrade your courthouse, repurpose your courthouse, or pay debt service on a new courthouse. So, 30 years or a long time. Staff expects, based on these other fees that we already charge, that this will raise approximately $9,000 a year. However, in the first year, we need to pay the Department of General Services their time to come out here and inspect our courthouse, which might be a couple $1,000s. So it's a limited amount of revenue, but these are charged to those folks who come into this room for other purposes during the day.
All right, at this time, I will open the public hearing with regards to the courthouse fee. Anyone wishing to speak, please come on up.
This is getting riveting, I'm sure.
It is.
Better line up.
All right, not seeing anybody in line. Anyone on Zoom wishing to speak, please raise your Zoom hand. All right, not seeing anybody on Zoom. I will close the public hearing and open it up to the board.
I'm gonna make a motion to adopt the provided ordinance amending Rappahannock County Code, section 103-7, fee assessed regarding court fees as presented.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Make this unanimous.
It's a nice, it's a user fee, and yeah, it might be a small amount of money, but maybe it'll add up.
All right.
We need we need some revenue streams. This might be small, but it's something.
That's it. I mean, we're just waiting to find it.
Yeah.
We found it.
It's not the answer, it's part of an answer.
All right, we have a motion and a second. I'm going to go ahead with the roll call vote.
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Whitson?
Aye.
Mr. Carney?
Aye.
And I also. Woo-hoo.
Wow, Donna, you're sounding like a veteran now. Aye.
It only took 18 months.
We wore you out.
All right, we are moving into public comment. Anyone wishing to speak, we're going to keep it at 3 minutes. Come on up and give us your name and your district.
Laura Grigsby, Hampton District. I'm getting my sea legs on this. For those that weren't here the day at 2 o'clock, I have many friends that have told me I'm completely wasting my life by coming to these meetings. So if you don't know what I'm thinking, then you can't possibly do anything about it, therefore, and poor Kier has to always listen to me. So a little background so that you understand where some of what I am talking about comes from. I'm married to a born here who went to Rappahannock County High School, left the county long enough to make enough money to come back to afford to buy land, and I am so lucky that he found me on the way. And we moved all of the property that I owned before I met him into Rappahannock County, and we have spent the last 35, 40 years acquiring property here in the county. This morning, or this afternoon, Mr. Whitson announced a number about the per capita tax responsibility, and I almost fell out of my chair because ours is significantly higher than that because we've worked our butts off for these years that we've been here. So with a couple of things, I love kids. I have a degree in management, housing, and family development. I'm certified to teach nursery through 7th grade. I couldn't make enough money at $8,000 a year when I graduated from college, so I left it and I went into sales. And I had a very successful career, which caused me to be involved with some really amazing volunteer opportunities, including the Virginia Main Street program in Elkton, Virginia, the Main Street program in Culpeper, Virginia. I developed the commercials and the programming for the Be a Local campaign in Culpeper County. I sat on the board for the Culpeper Wellness Foundation for 9 years. I chaired the committee, and we gave away 10 to 20 $10,000 grants every single year for the 6 years that I chaired that committee. And my parting comments at this point is that as we reviewed those grants and we made decisions about anything that we funded, we asked ourselves, would the organization be doing this without our grant money? The Assistant Commonwealth Attorney, last thing is this project sustainable without our continued support? And those are two questions that we often ask every single time we did a grant. And I only hope that that may at some moment spark something in someone's brain to really reconsider some of the decisions we're doing with our money.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Deke Deacon, Stonewall District. I want to commend the board on doing the right thing. I expected a 3-2 decision, but this is not the 3-2 I expected. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Hi, I'm Steph Ritter. I'm from Flint Hill, Wakefield District. I was just hoping that you guys were going to withdraw this resolution having to do with declaring Rappahannock County a non-sanctuary for illegal immigrants, since it's no longer on the list from Homeland Security, so it doesn't seem that it would be necessary to have this resolution. In addition, it's kind of mean-spirited, frankly. No, the President of the United States has taken a lot of steps, but numbers of them have been unconstitutional and unlawful. I don't know that you want to associate yourselves with that, but go ahead, invite those suits. And I don't see an influx of illegal immigrants coming to Rappahannock County, so we're talking about a danger that I don't think is exactly imminent, and frankly, we could use a few more kids in the school. That would redound to our benefit, in fact, because we'd get more money from the state. In any case, my guess is, and I've been told this by other people, that probably in their haste, they did at Homeland Security did a search under sanctuary, and what came up was the sanctuary for the Second Amendment, and they thought that was a sanctuary for immigrants, and thus put us on the list. But the other way to resolve this, of course, is to write somebody, assuming there's still somebody left at Homeland Security who can read, and say that we're not a sanctuary county. Thank you.
Well said.
Thanks, Steph.
Good stuff.
Betsy Deedle, Wakefield District. Thank you all for all of the time that you put into these meetings the last few months. And so I am astounded that this resolution would even be on the table, given the amount of time that you all have put into the work that needs to be done in this county, the important work. This is a waste of our time. It was taken off of the website today. It is not a good use of your intelligence and your time and your energy. This is a county that is welcoming, that is kind to its people, and this is an unkind act, and there's absolutely no reason why we should have a non-sanctuary county. I don't even know what a non-sanctuary county is. There are sanctuaries of beautiful places. There are sanctuaries against pedophiles and murderers and rapists. But a non-sanctuary county, what does that mean? So I would implore you tonight to take this off of the docket, to dismiss it, and get on with the important business that we need to do as a county. And there's lots of it, clearly. There's been a lot of it in the last couple of months. Thank you all.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment?
Hi, I'm Claire Castle here with Stonewall Jackson District, and on a different subject tonight, the lighting ordinance again. So I'm here to urge the board to vote yes on forwarding the amendment, or the lighting ordinance, to the Planning Commission, so that we can get on with the review and amendment and the public hearing and just move all of this forward. I think it's a great time. Expanding what we currently have will only add to the protections of our night sky and add to tourism, frankly. It's a boost to what we have here. So on another note, I applaud the expansion of the ordinance to residential uses. But I also hope, and I don't know if this is feasible, but that the board could or would include a recommendation to remove the exemption of government buildings from the ordinance. At a minimum, light fixtures for new construction or for additions or remodeling of government buildings, for instance, the new courthouse. It would be a perfect opportunity to actually showcase what we as a county stand by and support. So I just hope you'll consider that and protect our night skies.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah.
Karen Hunt, Jackson District. On the point of the lighting ordinance, Claire Castle's comments reminded me that I think just last week I read in the Fauquier Times about how they're spending $1.something million to light their athletic fields, their walking trails, and all of that. And I thought, oh geez, between that and Clevenger's, we really need to protect
what we have here. So I agree with the previous sentiments, and it's a good point about considering the government exemption on buildings. Let's walk the walk. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, Joyce Harmon, Wakefield District. I'm going to speak on the lighting ordinance. I've been a photographer and been documenting our dark skies for the last well over 10 years. And I've seen a definite degradation in our night sky. It's still a huge tourist attraction. And I would like to see us do as much as we can to preserve it, to try and incorporate our government buildings. I think that that's an important aspect, and really push towards the whole residential, the new construction, all of the major additions that people put on, because we really have something that is valuable here that there's no other county near a major city that has what we have. And dark sky tourism is probably some of the best tourism we can have. Nobody's coming out to look at dark skies and driving drunk down the back roads. They are sitting quietly after they have eaten dinner, observing dark skies. And I think that we can be a model county. We already have an internationally recognized dark sky park with our park. And if our new government building that is going to be built happens to be almost across the street from our dark sky park, which is our county park, I think it would be really important to include that in our ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Good evening, Board. I'm Thorny Van Acker from the Stonewall Shorthorn District. And I come as a private citizen, but I did initiate the process to get the Dark Sky Park certified at the Rappahannock County Park. And I think it's very important if we preserve that status and use that facility in its unique way. I did review the redlined amendment to the ordinance, and I think it's a step in the right direction. And I would encourage the board to recommend that this be passed on to the Planning Commission for further review and amendments. I would say there are 6 minor points that I'd like to add to that, and that is that the amendment, in section B1C, the amendment doesn't really explicitly cover applicability to major renovations or additions that would require a permit. And I think that would be a nice trigger point, just not only building a new house by itself. B3A makes reference to single-family dwellings, and I think that should be broadened to include multifamily units such as Rush River Commons. We may have more of those units as we come forward. And not only include the dwelling itself, but if there's ancillary structures such as garages, workshops, or barns that may be included. Maybe that paragraph needs to refer to them as residential use dwellings and associated structures. And then in B3, also in B and C, there's an exclusion for places of worship and government buildings. And frankly, lighting affects everybody, doesn't matter who owns the light. So I would propose that those exclusions be removed. It's an interesting point that there has been a lot of money spent in the county to upgrade lighting fixtures in at various buildings and residences. And most of the money was spent in doing the upgrades to lighting at the schools, the Board of Education, and county buildings and the like. So I think the precedent has already been set. E8, I think a paragraph there could be added about how to control lights. There's no mention in the amended ordinance about really how to control lights. You have photocells, you have motion sensors, timers, and programming devices you could use. And then the ordinance carries over a list of illuminance values for various types of light fixtures, but they're all commercial in nature. And I think that list could be expanded to include residential things such as security lighting, entrance lighting, driveway lighting as a category. And finally, the ordinance carries over an illumination limit of light trespassing on adjacent properties of 3-foot candles. That's very high, and the industry best practice is 0.1-foot candles. What I will do is I will summarize these as comments to the Planning Commission should the board recommend its forwarding. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. Edward Hughes, Wakefield District. I'm here to implore the board to withdraw its resolution declaring Rappahannock County a non-sanctuary county, whatever that means. But one thing is sure, this resolution doesn't indicate support for law enforcement. It indicates support for the program that allows masked, unidentified men to nab people off the street, put them in boxcars in the sky, and send them to concentration camps overseas. This is an abomination, and we should not in any way associate ourselves, and as a resident of the county, I wouldn't want to be associated with, a program that implicitly supports such a resolution that implicitly supports such a program. We all want to support law enforcement in its lawful enforcement of the laws, and we can do that by cooperating, as we have been doing with law enforcement. We don't have to take the radical step of declaring ourselves this non-sanctuary county that, by the way, if you really polled the county residents, you would find most of them would probably say, what does that mean? And then once you explain to them, it meant deporting legal residents in some occasions, they say no. So I would really urge you to withdraw the resolution. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Paige Flink again. I would like to echo what he has to say. My coming here, I realize what an independent county that we live in. And so for us to take the stand to adopt a resolution that is so undefined, ill-defined, and doesn't make sense to do in a county that prides itself to be independent and operating on a budget that is fiscally responsible, just seems like we're listening to someone tell us to do something that wasn't really asked of us, but we're trying to behave. I don't know many people up here that behave, so I think that you guys can be independent and disregard that resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Not seeing anybody else in the courtroom. Moving on to Zoom. Anyone on Zoom wishing to speak, please raise your Zoom hand. Not seeing any Zoom hands, I'll close public comment. We're going on to old business outdoor lighting.
So, is this something that you guys want to talk about? Should we just forward it to you, the planning commission?
If you're gonna forward it, please give us a priority, because last priority we heard was events for the top priority. And I have the feeling events are not the top priority anymore.
There you go. There's good direction.
Perfect.
And earlier today,
I
the
would say-
subdivision ordinance was forwarded to the planning commission.
Yes.
I would say that for me, events, this would take precedent over events. Now, I remember the last meeting, we did discuss having a joint meeting. Remember that?
No, but it's
Okay.
possible. I've got a lot of meetings on my schedule.
But I would bump this to the top, especially in light of, the courthouse discussion.
There seems to be a lot of public interest, which usually means that it's a sensible item to bump to the top. Events, I think, had a lot of public interest at one time, which has somewhat subsided. So I would say the lighting is probably the best thing to work on. And the subdivision we're taking up as a matter of changes at the state level. So that's just something we have to work through.
And Torney has to show up for the planning commission meeting, because I took notes, but then after I jotted feverishly, you said you'd show up and tell them what you said, so I think that's important, because we have received comments that I think you and Claire in particular reflected in your own comments, so as long as those get pushed into the draft, nothing will get lost. So if you don't mind, stay engaged.
Planning Commission always makes every effort to fold in constructive comments that fit what we're working through, regardless of whom they originate from.
Yeah.
Well, then I'm gonna move this along and move to refer this to the Planning Commission for further review and amendment of Rappahannock County Code 170-119.
Have a second?
I'll second it.
And it's our top priority now.
Top priority.
Yep.
Have a
Move it
motion,
to the front burner.
motion and a
I
second.
didn't schedule a work session yet.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And now Chris Parrish will be off our backs, right?
So we can only handle
Couple
one
public
thing at a
hearings
time
between
at
now
the
and
Planning Commission, so please don't come back with another top priority next month.
All right, and if I understand correctly, we now go into the fire levy discussion.
Yeah, sorry about that. We didn't leave you a neat and tidy agenda for the evening.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's okay.
We wanted the
We'll
whole
hear
gang
from
to be
Mr.
back
Carney,
together.
I think, on this one probably.
Can someone catch me up to speed real quick? So did you guys talk about this or did you just punt it?
We reviewed the fact
looked at
that
it.
the main change was changing from the capital threshold from 10,000 to 25,000, which is the amount below which the board would consider expenses operational for the purpose of this policy, and therefore subject to reimbursement to the volunteer companies. There are other changes, a lot of wordsmithing, but there were some changes that were recommended by the association to the county and fire levy board that were not accepted. One of those was the creation of a new category for pharmaceuticals. At the discussion at the fire levy board chose to include that and retain it in the version that was sent to the board unanimously. The other was a discussion about emergency spending, and right now this section talks about emergency repairs and it links it to a 10%. And the association disagreed with that and wanted to leave it as 10%, but it really doesn't make sense at 10% with a $25,000 limit because none of the companies are getting $250,000. So the 10% just doesn't work anymore, and that's why the wording was switched around. And because there was some concern, that whole paragraph in the recommended draft was totally changed during the fire levy board meeting. We had a robust discussion about the how emergencies would be handled, and I can pull that up.
And, so Van, my only, and then, well, may we wait till he gets past this when we talk about the increase on the reimbursable operating expense
I'll show
front, which I want to talk about that with you in particular.
Okay.
Well, everyone, but I just want your
The
thoughts.
25,000?
Yeah.
So
We can wait on that.
Emergency funding requests and the staff funding requests have been heavily changed after receiving the comments from the association. And you can see there's a lot of new words in there. Hard to read in the red line strikeout, but ultimately, this version is what was recommended by the fire levy board unanimously, including Chief Burke and Chief Carter.
So if my memory serves, the original number that was floated around was much higher, and then they came together and sort of said, okay, well, that's just too much. Let's take it to 25, and I think that the idea was that, this is what you're referring to?
Yeah, and basically, Christine made the point that $25,000 seems like a pretty high cap for a direct reimbursable operating expense. It's almost as if, and this is not what she said, but she noted it was high.
I said it's a lot of money.
Yeah, thank you. She said it was a lot of money. So all I said was, I've been on this bandwagon that we really need to rethink how we're handling, from a general ledger perspective, how we're accounting for all fire and rescue money inclusive of all the individual companies, and our county fire and rescue department, i.e. ALS 1400. So I have no issue with raising the cap on operating expense reimbursement requests, as long as we can all agree that during the remainder of this calendar year, we figure out a better system by which, maybe without the fire levy board itself in place, a system by which the individual fire and rescue companies present on the front end a budget so that we have some expectation from a county expense standpoint what we're going to be paying out in expenses, and use that as a control over, not a control over, as a mechanism to make sure that we're not inefficiently approving big expenditures that are creating redundancy, but instead we're approving expenditures that are encouraging a system and efficiency.
Well, so we had this big discussion about efficiency, and I mean, there are definitely ways to be more efficient. We've got 7 companies doing 7 different things and spending 7 different ways, and that requires them sort of communicating. And so we had a big discussion about that. You know, this is not about operating expense, so like even if they were to present a budget, what they're supposed to do, a chart of accounts at the beginning of the year, it might not include that one-time capital expense. And I think that their idea was that after COVID and after crazy inflation, like that 10,000 just didn't do what it needed to do.
I get that.
And there was just like complete general consensus. And I think, and I know I've said this phrase a lot, but I think the sticker shock is real, and I think it is for them too. Just like getting turnout gear is like just really expensive.
Yeah.
When was the, I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead.
When was the last time, so the ask from, was 7,500 to,
It went from 7,500 to 10,000 in my
okay, when did it do that? That's my question.
Since 2018, probably before COVID, before
So
20,
the
before March
10,000
2020.
was before COVID?
Yeah.
Was, you see.
That's my recollection.
I mean, the way that having sat on the fire levy board for 3-4 years, the way that I see it is that, I mean, all of these people that are sort of going over this stuff, I mean, I haven't seen, but with rare exception, a situation where there was a reimbursement reconciliation that the entire board was like, wait, what is this? Now, there was 2. There were 2, but they had to do with company 4, and had to do with printer ink, which is wild, and a zero turn. But that was it. I mean, the entire time I've been on there, you know, these are taxpayers in the county volunteering their time to do very, very difficult, dangerous work. And when we go over this stuff, it's just remarkable how much it's gone up in the past 5 years.
Yes, for sure.
So like, would that number at 25,000 be more appropriate at 18? Like, that's completely outside my bailiwick when the people who actually have to purchase this stuff say, and their original number was 50, and then that got shut down. Pretty unanimous. So they were like, that's way too much. And so then they bandied this around a lot and came up with 25. And I mean, as Mr. Curry explained, Chief Burke and Chief Carter were both like,
Yeah.
To me, it would be difficult to say. I mean, after we spent $400,000 on life packs, like everything's just really expensive.
All I'm saying is, from an accounting standpoint, when we had the 5 initiatives that included the Life Pack 35s, I called Bonnie and I said, can you pull together just what's the aggregate value of our annual reimbursements, more or less? And I think we landed on a number of $1.5 million. And in that exercise, Bonnie's very adept at pulling stuff together. We all recognize that and value that. What I saw was a very inefficient way for accounting for expenditures in a very significant expenditure category in our overall county operations. So if it's $1.5 million going to fire and rescue companies, my point is not that they don't deserve it. It's rather as we're making strategic decisions about things like Life Pack 35s, or we offered to purchase rapid response vehicles for companies that could benefit from them, that volunteers could take home, things like that. When we make those strategic decisions about what to push out, just kind of no questions asked, we think you guys need this equipment, who will benefit from it, raise your hand. When we make those big spending decisions, I want them to be strategic, I want them to be coordinated, and I want them to lead to an integrated fire and rescue system that's operating without redundancy and efficiently. And so to that end, all I'm saying is, it's fine. I mean, the higher cap is fine. It's just, I would like to change the way that we go about all of this so that we on this board have a much better handle on how much we are actually spending on fire and rescue generally, including our own county fire and rescue department. And I think that getting and this is not meant with disrespect to any of the great members of the fire levy board, but I just don't think we need the fire levy board. We can retain the fire levy compartmentalization of real property taxes, that's fine. I'm just saying when it comes down to our general ledger, I would like to see everything fire and rescue related, regardless of how it's being expensed, whether it's us reimbursing a company or us paying bills for ALS 1400. I'd like to see all of that income statement side spending shown in one section of our general ledger so that we have one complete picture of what we're doing. I'm not an accountant, I'm doing my best. I know Terry probably could help me out, but I would just like to see us looking at our total expenditures as a single picture instead of in disparate pieces. And I feel like this has just led me to want to emphasize again, or I feel the need to emphasize again, that we need to change the way we're doing this. It's not to say taking control away from anyone. They need to operate and they need to spend money. I would just like for them to tell us what they expect to spend, and then we reimburse them against some semblance of a reasonable budget each year. That's all.
So Ms. Jewell, in an answer to one of the questions, answered that question. I think what you're saying is it shouldn't take an answer to a budget question to get to the accounting all in one place. And so I recognize that. Take you back to the clearing exercise, facilitated discussion. One of the outputs of that was that county staff, county board should look at the agreements and is this the best way to do what we're doing? And I think what you're talking about falls within that overall effort, albeit I'll say every time we have a public safety committee meeting, we talk about the homework assignments from the clearing exercise and acknowledge that none of the people who were assigned, none of the parties involved, of which there are many, have made progress on those goals.
Are they all still alive and living in the county?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good sign.
Yeah. Well, they're general groups like the chiefs and the association. And
the chiefs are real.
I think the only person who's named is me, so that's
you're alive.
Healthy. I'm here.
Good.
Remind me.
That's a step in the right direction.
With the 25,000, 10's a lot, 25 is a lot. Do they have, is this still you spend the money and hope that we're gonna reimburse?
So the services agreement states that the Board of Supervisors aspires to provide 100% of operational expense funding to the volunteer companies. So what does operational expense mean? This document defines what it means in the context of the volunteer fire and rescue companies. So normally,
In the context of fire.
In the context of fire levy, right, and the fire and rescue company expenses. Normally, a $24,999 expense that lasts for 5 or 10 years is not going to be considered operational. That's going to be a capital expense. It's probably going to be a piece of equipment, some sort of facility or something like that. However, in the confines of this policy and the board's commitment or aspirational commitment to fund 100%, we're all agreeing that it means pretty much anything that costs less than $25,000. So when an HVAC unit that might cost $11,000 now needs to be completely replaced, a fire company could not come in and say, I would like $11,000 for my HVAC unit because it exceeds $10,000. Tomorrow, if you were, well, if you were to pass this in the next cycle of bills and it changed to $25,000, then that same company could say, I have an $11,000 HVAC unit, please reimburse me for the cost of that. Now, it also means they could say, I have a $24,999 whatever, please reimburse me for that. And so we have no way to know how much this will increase the overall operational expense for the county because we don't see all the expenses made by the companies and how the expenses that they're bearing that don't ever come through to us, except for seeing in an audit, how they're made up of chunks of more or less than 25,000, more or less than 10,000. So it's something you kind of have to step through the door to find out what it's going to be.
That doesn't make it sound any better, Gary.
No, it's not. Well, so the part that makes it sound better is this, and the comment that I've said multiple times. The Board of Supervisors clearly wants to do anything you can do to make the volunteer companies successful.
Absolutely.
Successful volunteer companies forestalls transition, gradual, very long-term transition to career paid providers of fire or EMS, which are probably 10 times more expensive than the volunteer system that you have today. So if you can incrementally increase your cost burden to the volunteer system in a way that preserves and protects the volunteer system, you're forestalling that transition further into the future, which should be our goal.
So
Your goal.
the point is that this cap allows them to just operate more flexibly in the way that they know how best to do. That was the idea here. And yeah, it is more money, but I think to Mr. Curry's point is like, I feel like they feel as though their hands are tied a little bit with that $10,000 cap.
Well, the other part of the conversation from earlier today is this is a recurring expense, and we all, I shouldn't say that, I felt like we should all be here if we're going to take on this additional recurring expense, because we keep hearing about growing budgets and revenue streams, or lack thereof, and this one's growing too.
Yeah, and this is probably growing faster than, yeah.
So I understand it all. I understand that $10,000 probably is not enough because the new HVAC system is going to be about $14,800. I know that because I've been living without my AC for a few weeks. But so I understand that it's $10,000 is probably does not allow them to operate. And to your point, I think Mr. Kearney, you said it. $25,000, $18,000. I'm not the subject matter expert. I would think the SMEs fully vet, we had the chiefs and we had the fire levy board take a look at this. With all of that said, I can only relate it to kind of what I do full time. And right now I'm looking at the money that I'm going to be spending for my programs at Laurel Ridge next year. And this Thursday, I have to tell my boss, I think I'm going to spend this in welding, this in plumbing, this in heavy equipment operator. So I don't think, to Mr. Whitson's point earlier, I don't think it's unrealistic or unreasonable to ask, for a little budgeting. I don't know that gets us any further in this conversation, but
Right. I mean,
I wanted to share
the
that.
way it works is they give us a chart of accounts at the beginning, which Pete is really trying to get them to do. But I mean, just in my experience in sitting on the fire levy board, like nobody shows up at these meetings being like, well, we didn't need to do it, but we decided to do it because we just kind of wanted to. I mean, these are volunteers. I mean, these people work 9 to 5 jobs doing, or in the case of a lot of them, 24-hour shifts doing fire and rescue elsewhere. And I think that the concept here is just, things have gotten so incredibly expensive, but to Mr. Curry's point, it's still a factor of 10 less than we'd be paying if we had full-time. So these are the people that are doing it, coming up with it. And so this is just a number that they were like, this allows us to continue, and especially with storing the drugs now, I don't know what's gonna happen. And it's getting very complicated. And there are economies of scale and size that, yes, as a county, if we were centralized, we could X, Y, and Z, but then we'd lose the cost savings of having 7 companies saving the taxpayers dollars. So it's like, you know, what was the last, do you remember the last meeting where we were reimbursing, there was just a bunch of items and they're so expensive now. Was it the turnout gear or something?
Yeah, I think, yes.
It just was like, doubled.
Yeah.
And it's like, why?
Well, it sounds like you
I don't
just
know.
need to make a motion.
Okay, make a motion, I'll make a motion. So move to adopt the resolution as presented or amended. Oh, presented. Move to adopt the resolution as presented.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I just want to ask my colleagues, current and future, to see if we can't, to Van's point just now, this does require time and effort from our already overworked volunteers. So I think that's yet another argument to do away with the fire levy board and just have them present what they're presenting anyway to county administration for our final sign off. And I think that'll save everyone a lot of headaches, and maybe we can work toward a cleaner accounting related approach to doing this part of our business.
Well, I can say I did bring it up and nobody wanted to get rid of it.
Of the fire levy board?
Yeah.
Okay, well.
They just thought, everybody said they thought it added value.
So Donna made me feel less lonely, now I feel lonely again, but that's all right.
I do think you had a good point earlier today, that I know you all have heard me say before, going into budget cycle, like, I feel like we need to have a better handle on where the dollars are flowing from, where the dollars are flowing to, what the long-term strategic planning goals are, and how we are best directing our tax dollars to accomplish those long-term strategic planning goals.
Yep.
And that's not a small question or a small series of questions. These are big questions, and it takes 3 of us to work on them. So y'all take them up or don't, but I think it's going to be a big issue in the future, growing issue.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and get the vote. This one's regular vote, right?
Yeah.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. All right, if I'm looking at this right, we are now going into the addendum 250602.
Yep.
Isn't there a county attorney?
That's next
Oh,
after this.
We-
We're bouncing all over the
We
place.
screwed you up this afternoon.
Kier was in charge, look what happened.
That's true. It was sheer chaos.
But you got out at like 3:30, so that was great.
Right, yeah, pure chaos. It's true.
Well, I have requested this addendum item be added to our agenda, and I'm sorry if some people are offended by it. I mean, I thought it was sort of wild that we showed up on a list, which I think we all agree we did not belong on.
Yep.
And we only meet once a month, and sometimes in between meetings, we will now not meet until, I believe it's July 7th. We are at a loss for how to communicate as a board in between meetings. And I had started to work on this before I know Mr. Curry was working on a joint statement, which didn't come together for a number of reasons. But I started to work on this in advance of that, and I looked at other counties in the United States that had issues with the confusion of where sanctuaries and non-sanctuaries were. And in particular, I looked at, it happened on Lancaster County in Pennsylvania, which had the unfortunate position of being, having a sanctuary city in a county that did not want to be a sanctuary county. And so the city adopted sanctuary language, And the county adopted non-sanctuary language to differentiate itself and its policies from the city, and I think wisely so. So we have limited opportunities to operate and speak as a board, and I know this language is probably not perfect, but this was an evolving situation, and I thought this was an opportunity for us to make a statement as a board that empowered our staff for the next month until we meet again to say, hey, we are not a sanctuary county. And in fact, our board felt so strongly about this position that they adopted this resolution at their most recent meeting and empowered me to discuss this matter with you to resolve any confusion that may exist. And that was the only reason that I asked for this to be added to the agenda. And I tried to capture reality as closely as I could and not be unkind. But that's the impetus for the resolution.
So oh, go ahead, Don.
Are you sure? You go ahead. Well, I was just gonna say, I think, we all know the list is down now. I think the list coming down is DHS probably realizing they made a mistake. Someone said, and I had seen or read, and I don't know how reliable the information was, that there was some confusion between, a 2A sanctuary county versus this. So, and that seems reasonable to me. So I don't see any need for this resolution. I think the only message that needs to be sent out is that any resident in Rappahannock County, any visitor to Rappahannock County, anyone driving through Rappahannock County, working in Rappahannock County, they just need to know that our law enforcement will uphold local, state, and federal laws, regardless of who you are. And I think they do that. So, I mean, that's where I am on this particular stance, or resolution, but happy to hear
I totally
from
agree
you
with
all.
you. They put us on the list mistakenly. They've withdrawn us. I'd like to withdraw this. Done. And I agree with Ms. Comer that, we are a law-abiding county. Flat out.
I don't think that's
And we're
ever
not a
been in
sanctuary.
question, that we're a law-abiding county, and this is a chance for us as a board to affirm that to other entities that may not be aware of that.
So, yeah, but I won't vote for that.
Okay.
So they've
Well, and
taken
I
us
would
off
just
the
say,
list.
for
And so
the folks that
that's how I
would
feel.
blame the sanctuary, the 2A sanctuary, for what's going on currently, that was the largest meeting I've ever been to as a supervisor. And I believe you were in attendance, Mr. Whitson, and you may have been
Luckily, we
running
were
it.
in the audience.
You all were in the audience, and I believe we had 600 people in attendance that night, and it was the most popular item we have ever had on a Board of Supervisors agenda. So to blame that, what transpired last week on the sanctuary sanctuary county status for 2A of Rappahannock, I think that's total misperception.
I know.
I think it's a total rumor, and I just would like to squash that
Yeah,
right here.
I'm
And
not
blaming you for
blaming,
that.
yeah.
Because I've heard
Like-
other people say that, and I just think, what's the saying, the rumor dies at the ears of a wise man. So I just wanted to bring that up as the only board member that was sitting on the board at the time that was adopted.
Yeah,
That's totally unfair.
No, there's no blame. Like, nobody was blaming that on. I was simply saying that I read somewhere that could have been a not communication, but yeah, miscommunication. No one's blaming anything on 2A. I remember reading about that meeting, fully support that. That is fabulous, but.
Mr. Goff says he has the answer.
Oh, yay.
I like
It's simple.
Yeah.
The Virginia statute that governs the duty to inform ICE, there's two statutes, 53.1218 and 19.283.2. In 2020, the General Assembly amended both of those statutes to exclude misdemeanors as reportable to ICE, only felonies. That is the source of the quote sanctuary claim that applies
to all counties and cities across the Commonwealth. So when a person is arrested for felony and they determine that they might not be legally present in the United States, every Virginia officer has the duty to inform ICE, that is the detaining agency, in our case RSW or the sheriff. It's no longer true that they have to inform ICE for misdemeanors, including domestic assault and driving while under the influence of alcohol or other misdemeanors that are punishable at a 12-month basis. Only those crimes under federal law that are punishable at a year or more must be reported to ICE. Now, I will tell you the practice, however, is that ICE already knows when somebody's arrested on a misdemeanor, and they will have lodged a detainer with RSW already. And there's just 2 recent cases that I can point to within the last 2 months where that has been the case. So I don't know how Rappahannock ever got on this list any more than anybody else in Virginia, because it's an affirmative duty under the state code to inform ICE when such a person is actually detained in a jail in the Commonwealth of Virginia.
So you're saying on the felony front, it's already happening, and on the misdemeanor front, it's happening by virtue of ICE being plugged in with detention centers.
By their own devices, they're determining that and lodging detainers. Sometimes it's because the arrestee is already on some kind of restriction as far as his immigration status. So I just think it's kind of a tempest in a teapot, this list that DHS put out. It just doesn't in reality apply.
Well, and just to reiterate, this was an attempt by me to say that, hey, I know our jail is doing the right thing. I know our sheriff's department is doing the right thing. That was the intention of this resolution. If you all don't want to take it up, we won't take it up.
Okay.
But, you know, we go on these trips in between meetings. It's like we go on a long trip. We won't see each other till July 7th. And do we have everything packed in our bags that we will need until we meet again?
Well,
I don't know.
After the 4th of July.
So
And it sounds like you all think we have everything packed that we need. So
And after
we
the
should go
MSO
on our
Carnival.
trips.
And after the MSO Carnival.
That's right.
Which
Well,
my-
oh my goodness,
Which
that's
my
right.
children were asking me about yesterday.
But to your point, that's exactly why I don't want to go into too much detail on this, but I work at a major law firm, and I know that law firms were targeted by various executive orders, big law firms were. And some law firms, you know, drew attention to themselves and said, hey, stop picking on us, and that didn't go very well. I know it's perhaps not an apt comparison, but here, this list at least appears to have been rescinded, and to your point about we don't meet for a while, at least tonight, between last Friday when our county somehow ended up on this list, and today when we're meeting, we're not on the list, or the list isn't active any longer. And I, based on other experience, would say that I'd like to kind of, for lack of a better phrase, just kind of lie low. And by the time we meet, the way things have been going in our country recently, this could change again. You know, look at the tariff situation by comparison. Tariffs on, tariffs off, tariffs on. So by the time we meet again, we might have to do something more forceful, but I'm just saying tonight, I don't feel like we need to do anything, because Art's already pointed out that from an enforcement perspective, everything's happening the way it should. The list has been rescinded, so let's just back off.
And I did want to say one more thing. I worked very hard to not also be critical of DHS, because they have a monumental and tough job ahead of them. And I would not want to be in their shoes trying to figure out how to make this happen.
Yeah.
So, but if y'all want to move on, we'll move on.
And the sheriff and the superintendent at the regional jail, you know, they're the ones charged with delivering the 53-1-218 and whatever the other one, and they're empowered to reach out and have reached out to all those folks up the chain in the federal government to let them understand how they operate.
Yeah.
And I understand that, but as an elected official for the county, and people say, how did we end up on this list? I want to make sure that I'm doing everything I can to keep us off the list.
I did hear there were like 20 counties in the state of Virginia that were
crazy.
put on the list.
I just
So,
have no idea how
yeah,
that.
it was crazy.
Yeah, no, I appreciate where you're coming from. And I don't think what you came up with is a bad idea. I told you earlier today, we had that concealed carrying government buildings thing come up. And that was another one where we really didn't, I think in the end, we did come out and say something.
We adopted it.
Yeah, but I think that was another situation where we could have just said nothing and the situation would have remained the
2A
same.
probably would have.
Yeah.
All right,
So-
should we move on?
Path of least resistance. Sure.
Thank you for your
Thanks.
efforts.
Yeah.
Oh, sure thing.
Yep. All right, now if I've got this right, Assistant Commonwealth's Attorney position.
Well, now we know why you were.
So Ms. Donahue, you missed Mr., and maybe you should just wait till Mr. Carney comes back. You missed Mr. Goff's introduction earlier, so I don't know, you might want him to add to that.
Thanks
what he
for
said earlier.
spending so much time with us today.
Wow. Who knew?
They were all here for Van.
Waiting for Van.
I'm not running for re-election, so I'm gonna raise taxes. Oh, really?
That'll end well.
No, he's great. I'm not mad, we just disagree.
We're allowed to do that.
Are you
Are we
sure you don't want
taking a
some
break?
cookies?
Sorry?
Are we in a break?
Well, we have one person in a break, so do you need it?
Are there?
I don't eat
Bottles
much
of water?
anymore either.
Mhm.
It's like-
Yeah,
What's happening?
she wants a bottle of water. I think we can
Good.
handle that without.
Just know if I was writing.
Although, one trip to Longhorn and my appetite is fine. 16-ounce ribeye for lunch.
Oof. Put you to sleep.
Indeed.
Smile, Bonnie, you get to do this.
That's why Miss Bonnie's still here. I am so sorry.
That's the running joke in our office. We don't have to make it.
That's a good point.
We get to do it.
Yep, okay. Let's kick it off.
Yeah, that'd probably be
I
good.
look forward to just hanging out under the jungle beer again.
And make sure people at home can hear you.
Yep, yep.
I know. I don't drink beer much, it sucks.
I thank all of you for, well, first of all, your services, board members, because as I can tell, it's tough. The job of Commonwealth Attorney is a tough one too. And I've been asking for the Compensation Board to approve funding for an Assistant Commonwealth Attorney for this jurisdiction since I first took office in 2012. All the other surrounding jurisdictions have multiple Assistant Commonwealth Attorneys. They have greater, albeit greater, docket numbers, but as I was explaining earlier today, docket numbers are not the key. The key is the complexity and what happens to a one-man, one-attorney office when you have one single very, very serious case. It can become a succubus, one single case, which means everything else has to take a second chair. The money I'm asking for locally is, in my opinion, modest for the amount of service that you're going to get out of this person. You're going to get another attorney in my office who is highly skilled, well-educated, and public-spirited because they're willing to take on this very difficult job of assisting me in what is a core function of government, and that is law enforcement. We stand in this courtroom and we try to convict people who have hurt our county, hurt our society. But we ultimately answer to the Commonwealth of Virginia and the people of the Commonwealth. And I will point out that it is the policy of the Commonwealth of Virginia to confine funding, for the most part, for Commonwealth attorneys to the Compensation Board's judgment
In the Compensation Board's judgment, Rappahannock County merits this position due to a number of factors, as well as the overarching policy that our association, the Association of Commonwealth Attorneys, has lobbied for, that there should be no longer any single man Commonwealth Attorneys' offices in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Last summer is a good example of why. I became extremely ill, as you all know, and was unable for some time to adequately function. I had to impose upon my very good friends in local jurisdictions, neighboring jurisdictions, to come in and bail me out. But I also faced at that time a dreadful jury trial only days after I had major surgery, because I don't have an assistant who is in on what's going on. It's one thing to ask somebody to come in and cover a docket where you're dealing with a bunch of run-of-the-mill DUIs and driving suspendeds and those kinds of things. And it's another when you're asking them to step in a major felony case and take over for you, especially when you've got speedy trial limits running on you. So it's essential for the effective continued operation of the Commonwealth Attorney's mission here in Rappahannock County that I have a proper assistant. The Compensation Board will, according to Ms. Jewell's calculations, will be providing over $85,000 to that end in both fringe benefits and base salary. So what I've asked the board to do is to cover the difference, which is, according to Ms. Jewell's calculations, about 21,000? 21 or 28? 28,000. Up to.
There's some
Yes.
assumptions included in that.
There are.
What benefits will be taken and things like that.
Yes, because in order to get attorney, you gotta think about, a lawyer has to go through not only undergraduate and incur those costs and loans, also, as Mr. Carney knows, when you get to law school, the bills really start rolling in as far as tuition bills, and it's expensive and it's hard. A person who goes through that sort of professional training is being paid in this range and well beyond. There are assistants in Culpeper County who make much, much more than this, and they're still at a lower level attorney position. We have studied the issue of where to place this person in my office over across the street. We believe we can do that. This person will be responsible for a number of jobs assisting me. Of course, there's always a long learning curve too. To get up to where I could handle things in Page County, where I started working for Mr. Hennessy way back in the dark ages, it took me about 3 years really to get up to speed. I have the benefit of having practiced criminal law since 1997. Actually, my first case was a third-year practice certificate in 1996, a DUI, which I lost miserably, but nonetheless, I remember that case more than I remember anything else. And I had Judge Crump on the bench, and it was quite an ordeal. You all don't know who he was, but he was a stern judge, I'll put it to you that way. So this person will be starting at what I consider to be a very de minimis salary for the type of responsibility that I'm going to ask this person to perform and train them to do so. Hopefully this person will want to remain a member of our community for the long term and may wish to have a future in politics himself or herself. There are several interested folks, but I don't think that they will come to pass because here again, their monetary expectations far outstrip the available funds that we have here in this package from the Compensation Board. This is a long time coming for this county. It's an important leap forward for the delivery of criminal justice services to this county. I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but we have done a tremendous amount to improve the services provided by the Commonwealth Attorney's Office. First and foremost was the Victim Witness Coordinator, which is a grant-funded position, and that could go away depending on federal and state funding. But as I told the board at the time, if that happens, that happens, and everybody who takes a grant position knows that. The next step was replacing Pat Giles, which was a huge job. It took 2 people to replace her. We've been living on the cheap for a long time. And that has improved vastly the efficiency of my office. They are fantastic people who have added huge amounts of dollar value for what the taxpayers are receiving. I believe this will also likewise advance the level of service that this board will see coming to Rappahannock County in the justice system. I believe will be much more efficient, and I believe will be, more effective for the achievement of our goal, which is justice for people. So I would ask you for this modest amount of money. I realize I've been listening, and I know what a budget process you guys have been through, and this is a recurring expense. I'll add one thing. The difference between a compensation board position like this and a grant position is, this is permanent. It ain't going anywhere. Once the compensation board has deemed us to be in need, their judgment is rarely, if ever, and I don't think I've ever seen a permanent assistant position defunded by the compensation board in now almost 30 years. So I heard what Ms. Smith had to say earlier this afternoon, and I wanted to address that specifically with you, Ms. Smith, because I think that the likelihood of that occurring is de minimis, really.
I don't think I said that.
What's that?
I don't think I said that. I said it's a recurring expense.
Yeah, but I'm talking about, you said if they decided that they would like to not fund it anymore. I don't know if that was you, ma'am. Maybe I dreamed it, I don't know. But nonetheless, I want to reassure the board that that is not a likely occurrence. And there is a job description of what we would be advertising. The funding would become available July 1st. I would like to advertise sooner rather than later and start conducting interviews as soon as possible, hoping that actually we get applicants, which I think we will. But I can't tell you until it actually starts to happen. I'll be glad to answer any questions you have.
My only question, which I seem to default back to the same way of thinking on any of these positions, and that goes even when we were talking about, I think, if I remember correctly, even hiring for Bonnie's position, and that is, and also question courthouse costs. What do other counties like ours do in this regard?
Well, as far as I know, they've all received. Now, I don't think there are any outliers except perhaps Bath and Highland.
Those were the ones that I had in mind.
And right now, you see, I know in Bath, their Commonwealth's attorney is part-time anyway.
Oh.
Yeah. So she's a very nice lady. Her daughter got a speeding ticket one time coming through here. So. But she, I believe those are the last holdouts. We were one of the last, but everywhere else has gotten them assistance. And it was the goal of VACA to get this done. And a bunch of solo guys got assistance last year, but not everybody. We were one of the outliers that were left, but we did get it. And I think I will get back to you with the exact number, but I believe all the solo guys now have assistance except for those two jurisdictions.
Okay.
Approved by the comp board.
And so one, you can stop me if this is not a fair analogy, but the Sheriff's Association lobbyist basically looked at small localities and said, we need to get, and correct me if I'm mischaracterizing this, but these small localities are handling a lot of stuff, and sheriffs in these certain size localities that fall into this band for compensation, in fact, are being sort of discriminated against from a compensation perspective, because while their localities look small, they're performing the functions of a larger locality. And if I remember correctly, the lobbyist compelled the legislature to provide a supplement to basically...
The comp board funding is generally set at levels based on the population size of a community, and they're in different tranches.
Yeah.
0 to 10,000 population, 20%. So for the sheriffs this past year, they jumped all sheriffs up to a minimum of the 40,000 population.
Okay.
So just put them up several rungs on the ladder.
So my analysis is probably overly attenuated and maybe not even correct. But I was just thinking about that because to me it made sense. Because it's like, yeah, we're a little Rappahannock County. We don't have a lot going on. But still the sheriff said, hey, we have a lot going on and this additional money is coming from the state. And in that case, it really wasn't a local burden from a budget perspective because it was fully funded by it.
Commonwealth's attorneys jumped the gun on that one by several years, and they got a similar thing passed many years ago.
1995.
Yeah, okay.
The reason was we had to give up our private practice, which if you are a good attorney, is quite a lucrative thing, and it's quite something to ask of a professional to become a full-time Commonwealth's attorney. We're treated at the 35,000 population level, and that's where our funding is stuck in it.
Right.
So for the sheriff matter, that was a $0 local impact.
Yeah.
The state said, we'll give you X dollars more per year, and then the board considered passing that full X dollars. Whereas in this case, they're saying, board in Rappahannock, in this particular case, if you want to hire an assistant Commonwealth attorney, it'll cost you up to $28,000 to get a full-time equivalent person. Because they don't cover 100%.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying, or what I'm asking is it reasonable to follow this kind of line of thinking that we are, just because we're small doesn't mean we don't have to deal with complex stuff. And that's the rationale for these one-person Commonwealth attorney shops to have this push from the compensation board to say, you guys need more because it's not that you're small, it's that you handle a lot, just like the sheriff.
Right.
Compensation.
Well, if I understood, I may restate your point, that the compensation board, in its judgment based on what it knows about us, has said we need this. And by statute, actually, they're the ones who decide. I mean, it's really not up to us. They said, you're getting one whether you want it or not, because here it is. They make that decision. And it's based on not just numbers, but also the type, the assignments, the weighting of the cases that we handle and have been over whatever the period is they're analyzing. Yes, it's true. I prosecute, trespass by pigs, and that doesn't sound very exciting, but I also,
But interesting.
But interesting too, especially if pigs can read the no trespassing signs. That's always the question I have. So, but we also, we also have had murders, we've had rapes, we have serious sexual offenses, we have serious financial crimes, we have complex, even though it sounds like, it's just a class 1 misdemeanor, DUIs can be extremely complex legally. Lots of the stuff that I deal with on a daily basis can present real thorny problems. And one of the hard things to do is balance the volume with the time that's needed to think. This is not, cookie cutter. I have to think a lot.
Yeah.
And there is very little time outside of the only time I get to think really deeply is when I'm out of the office, because I'm constantly putting out fires, answering phone calls, doing this, doing that. And so I spend my evenings sitting in the great room at home, and I bring home files and I have to do my thinking there. Yeah. Because I need some help, especially on these more mundane cases, in order to free me up for what's coming. And what's coming is going to be big. I promise you, read the papers tomorrow.
I get it.
So I'm asking you, it's not an onerous expense. I realize we're in strict budget times, and it is an ongoing thing. I expect this person would be a member of our county staff for the foreseeable future. If not the one I hire now, his or her replacement.
So is the maximum local pay-in the first year is $23,000?
It's 28. So I said it's up to, health insurance is a very large expense, and it's quite variable whether the person does not take health insurance, is employee only, employee plus one, or employee plus family. So we budget, Bonnie's budgeted and calculated, assuming they will come in and want to cover their entire family, which has the highest cost to the locality. Now, if that doesn't come to bear, then the cost, won't be borne, but we have to prepare for it.
Yeah.
Right, I think that the number of the 18,000 health insurance number is far in excess of what you all pay for my health insurance, so.
No. That's what we pay for all families.
I don't have family.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah. That's on the employer part, yeah.
Yeah, that's the employer part, and then if you don't elect to have the family coverage, then
Right.
it's just, it's $880 per paycheck times 24.
It's less than this, yes.
Yeah.
So I think what we have to do, because this is outside of our whole budget deliberation, in my mind, we gotta go find some way to save $28,000 if we're gonna agree to this. Like, we all have to make a commitment to go scrub.
I can say the way that
In the months ahead.
Yeah, the way that the resolution is set up is it would take from your contingency, which is not backed by recurring dollars, just to be clear. So it solves your problem this year, but it adds to the reliance on general fund balance that you've already
Just committed
practically committed
$250,000.
tonight as well.
So let's keep that at the forefront of our mind next year when we talk big numbers like schools and EMS or anything else. I mean, we just gotta show restraint. It's important. I mean, and he needs the thing for sure. And I get what you're saying about, you can't just run from case to case to case to case and do an excellent job consistently all the time if you don't have any time to put your thoughts together.
The older I get, the harder it gets,
I
but
know.
it's a core function, I will remind you, of government that we deliver this service. And there's a reason why it's in the Constitution, and there's a reason why the funding is primarily out of Richmond with the compensation board. It shouldn't be entirely a local thing, but we do, as the sheriff does, a lot of things to enforce the local code too. And that's not required. I don't have to do any of that, but I do it because it's what's needed to be done. It would be very nice to have a young assistant who would handle the trespass by pigs kind of thing and leave me to worry about the murder. That's what this is all about.
If you don't mind, I know we've talked in the past, when you're not in the office, a lot of times you're in other counties doing their Commonwealth job.
Yes.
I'm more concerned about our Commonwealth job. Do you have to help other counties? Is that part of your,
It's a you scratch my back and I'll scratch yours.
right?
There's nothing that compels me, but when the circuit judge of an adjacent county calls me up and says, Art, I got one that none of us can touch, will you be willing to take it? I feel compelled to say, yes, Your Honor. And so off to Greene County or Culpeper or Page or where I've got special prosecutors coming in up here. Stafford County is handling a complex case for me here, complex embezzlement case, because I was conflicted. One of the persons who's accused was a victim at the time the investigation started, and I couldn't touch it. Otherwise, I couldn't speak to my own victim. So, yes, the answer is I don't have to, but I always do, because next time I need a special prosecutor, I need to call somebody. And I like the stuff with Bill Fletcher, you know. I mean, I couldn't find anybody locally that would touch that with a 10-foot pole. So I had to go way away to get somebody to come in and take that case. Because I obviously couldn't deal with it and not even get close to it. So I had to get Greene County. But then the payback was, as soon as that was over, the phone rings and it's Win Consalvo from Greene County saying, hey, Art, you owe me one. Get down here. So I was down there Wednesday all morning.
Yeah.
Which took me away from trying to get a really complicated issue through with serving an inmate in the Department of Corrections. But anyway, I won't bore you with all my boring detail of my life. But nonetheless, I believe it's time that this happen and that we keep afoot of what's going on everywhere else in the Commonwealth. And the days of the one-man prosecutor shop, I believe, are long gone and over. I hate to ask at such an inconvenient time, but I didn't know this was coming in. I called Bonnie and I said, have you seen the new comp board list? And I said, do you think we're on there? She said, no, I don't think so. Lo and behold, she calls me the next morning going, yep, you got it. So,
What about office space and all that good stuff? Do you?
we'll have to fit them in with the VCIN terminal and the kitchen and the coffee mess and all that stuff. And they'll survive.
I started out next to the Xerox machine in Page County, so.
Are you gonna need any, is there maintenance or work that needs to be done up there before they can?
We think we can fit them into the existing conference room, with the de minimis type of stuff. And the ladies that are working there have given it a lot of thought. We think we can do it at very little cost. We had thought about some, change physically, adding a partition, but, Ricky came and looked at it and said it was a no can do. So we'll have to, revamp and readjust with our cheap little partition things.
So I have a couple of questions that might be kind of stupid, but I'm going to ask them. The comp board salary, would that figure change year to year? Because as we have seen, the insurance figure is going to change year to year, and sometimes in ways that can really mess us up. So look at what's happened at the school, at the state level, they don't really care what changes on that end. It's here's the money. So will that, with the comp board salary, would that increase incrementally with everything else would be my first question. And then I kind of know this answer, but what again, a part-time, what about a part-time assistant? Someone who would then still be, up to snuff on everything you're working on and could come in and help, but we wouldn't have to carry that full-time burden, because like you said, this could not have come at a worse time. I too like to have some time to think about things, and yeah.
Question number one is, will it change? That depends on what they do in Richmond as far as raises, like percentage cost of living type stuff. This salary, as I understand it, is a Commonwealth Attorney 1 slot. This is what everybody, it's uniform across the state. This person would have to go up a step or two in order to get yet another raise, which would generally mean that I would be asking the comp board to make that adjustment based on the person's performance and length in service. So yes, it can change. Will it change? I don't know. I mean, it depends on whether there's state money for a COLA or whatever, but that would be, that wouldn't be locally absorbed anyway.
In each of these positions listed in that table, when the General Assembly and the government includes a 3% raise, those numbers will go up 3%.
Okay, good. That was my question.
So it's not like
yeah.
the schools where there's this LCI thing.
Yeah.
Some of our departments do not have, well, in this department, there are two individuals essentially functioning as what is the AA2 here, right? And so the county fully funds one of those assistants, legal assistants.
Right.
The state is funding one of them.
Yeah.
And the county is funding another one. Now, how the dollars work out with 43,941, and you're just getting that much revenue for the two humans that are in that building. So when you, as a board, increase salaries by 3%, you're adding it to 3% to everybody's total salary, and you're getting a revenue change of 3% on these numbers.
In answer to question 2 is, I can find no statutory authority for part-time Commonwealth's attorneys except for volunteers. And I'll give you an example. June 16th or 17th, I can't remember. Anyways, my mother's 85th birthday. I couldn't find somebody from around in the local CA's offices to cover a very short circuit court docket that day. So Mr. Percone volunteered, and he doesn't receive any compensation for that. So there are volunteers, but that's not a workable solution. You can't ask attorneys who charge $300 and $400 and $500 an hour to come in for nothing, unless you're owed something. So I don't see, and I was doing this with Jack. I was paying him an hourly rate, a very modest hourly rate of $50 an hour out of our part-time money fund. that wasn't working out that great either, because here again, who wants to come in for $50 an hour when you don't have to? You know, Jack was retired and we were close, and he did it because he felt that he could help me, and we were friends. But that's, you know, you can't rely on that either. The general policy of the Commonwealth has been to completely abandon part-time prosecutors. What the General Assembly wants and what is passed on through the Compensation Board is professional prosecutors who do nothing but prosecute. It's not like the old days when you had a country law practice and, you know, you walk in with chewing on a piece of hay and kicking the cow manure off your boots. Morning, Your Honor. You know, that's not the way it is anymore.
Watermelon now, right?
It's kind of like that here, isn't it? A little bit like.
We try to keep it that flavor.
Yes.
We do. We do.
It feels that way sometimes.
Yeah, we do. But the reality is, we get judges now from all over, and they don't get that ambiance, don't necessarily appreciate it. So the point I'm making here is that part-time is discouraged, and I don't see any authority for it.
And one more dumb question. Let's just pretend, you won't want to pretend this, but let's just pretend that we don't approve this tonight. Does this go away? Could we revisit this in 3 months, 6 months?
I don't know the answer to that. I know the funding would probably come through, and maybe Ms. Jewell would be better to answer that question.
Based on other situations, there's a funded position right now in the circuit clerk's office. It has been for years, that hasn't been filled. And this differs from what Art is saying about prosecutors. It's an assistant or deputy position in the clerk's office. She is using a part-time person to draw down against that. But no, that position has not gone away. And in fact, the circuit clerk's office, in addition to having that non-filled permanent position, just like Art's office, was allocated by the comp board another full-time position for fiscal '26. And we've not heard from the clerk about that at this point. I mean, she's not filling the other full-time position that she has.
So the board,
to answer your question, I don't expect that if this sat for a few months and you wanted to revisit it, that would be taken away by the comp board.
the board could step into this position, say, and authorize it for 3/4 of a year, and probably have enough money in the budget for it to have enough, right? But it's a hole for next year, right? You wouldn't have to use your contingency, but you would have a hole for next year.
On those, in the clerk's office, those vacant positions, if they were filled, and it sounds like one is being drawn down in part by part-time, and the other one's just completely unfilled.
Correct.
So the position that's completely unfilled, if it was filled, would it be a scenario like this where there'd be some minor local financial contribution required to support that currently unfilled position in the clerk's office?
I would expect that would be the reality of the situation. I want to make sure that you understand there's not a mandate that the locality provides supplemental funding for any of these positions.
That's correct.
It's who can you hire at these comparable salaries?
And you're going-
generally, the answer is no one.
And even if you hire for the salary, you're going to provide health insurance, and you're going to provide
Yeah.
health insurance at the same rates as the others. I want to just go back to what I just said. It wouldn't be as clean as delaying, because you're not going to get the revenue from the Commonwealth for the salary, but you wouldn't have to pay the benefits for that part of the year that you delayed.
I feel like the local addition here is pretty modest, and then, like I said, I mean, I just feel like we just have to keep it at the front of our minds as kind of a one-off that we have to deal with through very restrained budgeting in the upcoming fiscal year, with the understanding that it'll become a recurring expense that we'll have to cover with recurring revenue. And we're doing a patch, I guess, now from cash to get us to a point where it's budgeted in year to year, right? I mean, isn't that?
We'll be walking in probably 2 pennies in the hole next year between the actions not taken tonight and the general fund dollars that were committed to just balance the budget, even if you did increase the meals and lodging tax, so.
Which, not to mention, violates our policy that we just adopted.
Well, yes,
Yeah.
that's what I think the
Anyway.
second and third vote of violating your policy you chose to do. This would be a fourth.
What is that policy?
Your fund balance policy you just adopted a couple meetings ago.
Not use money for recurring costs.
Yeah, I know, but the key point is
But I think that this position comes in at a time where we could not have done it earlier.
That's correct.
Yeah, you could have hired an assistant
So,
Commonwealth attorney at
this
any
is-
time and paid full freight. Now you can buy one for $28,000.
Right.
This
But my point is that we just didn't have the timing to include this in our budget.
Correct, we didn't,
Right.
because the state was really prolonged in their budget
So-
adoption, we didn't know.
Yeah.
When did we find it? Just about 3 weeks ago, right?
It was right before our board meeting.
Yes, it was, right, the day, it was the
Yeah,
day
'cause
before
I
the,
walked in with the sheet.
yeah, it was the day before
I
your last
remember,
meeting.
yeah.
I have to say, I expect that I may be a standalone vote against this, but, and it's no reflection on you, Mr. Goff, or your office, or anyone else, but, I think about Ms. Grigsby, and I think about how this government has grown since I joined the board, and our population hasn't grown. I hear the arguments that the complexities have grown, which is always ironic to me because technology is supposed to make our lives easier, and yet we never seem to get ahead. But I mean, it's not a reflection on you nor your office, but we have added a secretary to the office, and adding this additional position will be doubling the staff of that office since I joined the board, and I don't think that's what people elected me to do. And I also hope that Ms. Jewell doesn't take it personally that I voted against establishing her office before she was hired, because I just don't think that people wanted us to grow the government, our bureaucracy. But here we are. So I may be a standalone nay, but that's what I'm hearing from people, and I hope you won't take it personally because it's not intended that way.
I don't, and not at all, and to try to, we'll give you one last pitch that might, I hear a lot different, that people are interested in law and order, and they want effective and consistent and professional prosecutors and law enforcement. We've come a long way from even when I first started here. And it is more complex and it is nastier than the types of cases we're getting. I can remember when I was taking appointed cases over here, because Pat Davis said, if you live in this county, by God, buddy, you're gonna take appointed cases. So I'd have to come back over the mountain from Luray and take these cases. And I'd meet up with Peter Luke in that room up there to talk about the cases on a general district court day, and those dockets were 3 or 4 pages long. Okay, now they're 28 pages, 32, 42, 45, 60. And it's not just traffic, there's crime too, and a lot of it. And there's a lot of serious traffic too. Probably the second most serious felony that's committed in this county on a regular basis is eluding police, which is a deadly thing. That means a high-speed chase involving a police officer on 211, 522 primarily, where everybody involved is put in risk of death, and they're very serious cases. Typically, now the other change is, when I started out practicing law, the Commonwealth could insist on a jury trial that included a sentencing phase. That's no longer the case. I can't insist on a jury imposing sentence anymore, only the defendant can. Well, they got nothing to lose. They know the judge is going to follow the sentencing guidelines, so what happens? We might as well throw the dice with a jury. So there's a lot more juries now than there used to be, because the defendants were scared to death of being sentenced by a jury. And a Page County jury give a dude 20 years one time for stealing a chainsaw. Well, that doesn't happen, Dan, that's just true. And
12 from Stanley True. And, yeah, but now they're not afraid of risking it in front of a jury because they know the judge is going to sentence them. So that doubles the workload. And when you talk about a prosecutor preparing for a jury trial, it's 3 times the work of a bench trial. Jury instructions, labeled exhibits, organizing, interviewing, prepping the witnesses. It's just a huge boatload of work. And there's a lot more of it now than there used to be. So I don't think that the public at large is going to fault you in the least for adding a prosecutor who is fighting to protect them.
I think I have a very good record on law and order, and I stand very proudly on that. And being conservative in terms of funding staff is a different matter, and you can't fix every problem with money, respectfully, and I don't care to argue about this.
Well, I just thought I would try to persuade you.
Yes, sir, I understand what you're saying.
And I don't take
Thank
it
you very
personally, and I
much.
hope you don't take my
I don't
remarks
take
as
it personally
personal.
either.
Art, well, I have 2 questions. You never imagined that this would be such a discussion for $28,000, but here we are. I mean, we've been
You're
fighting.
gonna have a steep hill next year, steep.
2 pennies already.
Wow. Okay. So, go back to your Pat Davis point. I didn't catch that. That was my first question. I just want to understand what an appointed case means. You said.
Oh, okay. Well, when I was defending, and I was actually an assistant part-time public defender, I obviously I've lived here since the 1980s. So she found out that I had passed the bar, and so she said, "You're going to get court-appointed cases from Rappahannock County General District Court." And so in those days, it was a much more, I'll put it to you, a much more country feel and a whole lot less rushed. We had Judge Charlie Foley was the General District Court judge, and Peter would hold court back there in the jury room, and the judge would give us all the time we wanted to come out with an agreement, a plea agreement in the case. So it was just a whole lot different, and the dockets were a lot lighter, a whole lot lighter. The general rule was we had a murder every 7 years, and that's typically remained true. The trouble is when you get, like a major financial case and a murder at the same time, and then it's hard to manage.
Yeah.
It's hard to manage time-wise. So that was my point of Pat Davis calling me in and saying I had to take the point.
So I do have a question, and this, correct me if I'm wrong, because it may be rumor and I just don't know. I was told that our deputies don't wear cameras on their vests because it would be very time-consuming for you to have to go through all of the tapes and stuff like that to be able to verify, and I think I'm right.
Yes.
So would this person allow our deputies to wear a camera?
Good question. The law is that if the local law enforcement department is using body cameras, that the comp board shall fund a position. So I don't know if that means that if we go to body cameras, that they're going to give me another one just to look at body camera all day long. Or if because I've got the other one, that person has to suck that up too, and me for that matter. But that I don't have a clear answer in my mind about it, other than I know it's mandatory that we have another if we do go to body cams.
And then you gotta share that video all over to the other side. There are many expenses with body cameras.
A huge amount of
In
expense.
addition to a commonwealth attorney position.
There also has to be a dedicated terminal in my office that's accessible only by me and my staff, so that we can then allow defense counsel to view the body camera as requested. We can't just hand that out, and you can't make copies of it because it's all proprietary. That'd be another humongous expense, which I think is usually rolled in with the contract with the body camera company.
So,
Sorry. It's real expensive.
I have a question. The base amount that the comp board has funded is 7,796.
Plus reimbursable fringes up $7,800.
Oh, I see. So it's reimbursable fringe.
Yeah.
I got you.
Which basically, it covers FICA and a tiny portion of your VRS.
Okay.
Because VRS is 13%-ish.
Something like that, yes.
FICA is 7%, so you're 20% off the top. This is 10%. And that's not even talking about health insurance.
So Art, my other question was, your office is, as you stated at the outset, your office is configured differently than the Pat Giles days. So when Pat was there, Pat did she did paralegal work, she answered phones, she did all the administrative stuff, managing an office for a Commonwealth's attorney. Could you just sort of describe, it's Jenny and Amy now, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Would you just kind of describe their roles? Is it now that you have two people who are basically function as paralegals, or is it truly that it, based on Pat's experience and decades in that position, it got split into two? I just want to understand the staffing and what.
I took my experience with Page County and imposed it once I hired the two. So Jenny Grigsby is our paralegal, and she handles all of the circuit court stuff. And Amy is more or less a legal assistant. She handles the paperwork shuffle that is the general district court and the juvenile court.
Okay.
So I envisioned that Amy and Jenny would probably switch physical locations in the event that I'm able to hire someone, so that the new person would be primarily handling the general district court side with Amy.
I got it.
And that I would be working with Jenny right outside my office. Right now, it's, hey, Jenny, from upstairs.
Upstairs, yeah.
So Amy would go upstairs with the new person, and Jenny would come downstairs with me. And they seem to be happy with that arrangement.
So it would almost be, and tell me if I'm oversimplifying, but to some extent, functionally, you'd have your general district docket handled on the second floor, and your focus with Miss Grigsby would be on the circuit side.
Yes, well, probably initially I would be holding hands with the new person, even in the general district court. You don't want to you can't just wind them up and like they're little tin soldiers and let them go. You have to train them. So I would be doing both still for quite the foreseeable future. And then the other advantage to me would be in a large case, that I would have a second chair. Somebody who was also doing a review of the case file and making sure that we had all of our evidence and the bases upon which it was admissible ready to go, which is hugely time consuming. First, there's a relevancy test, and then there's all kinds of exceptions and things like that that vastly complicate what goes into the preparation of a jury case folder. It takes me days and days, even in this Massoud case, which was a couple months ago, which was just a simple eluding police in Sperryville at very high speeds.
Yeah.
And only one Commonwealth witness. It still took me 2 days to get the trial
deal.
folder ready to go.
I remember that case.
Yeah.
I was there briefly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's
Okay.
still trying to get bond, by the way. That's the other thing we do too, is you do all the bond hearings and the bond appeals and all that stuff. Even at the low-level misdemeanor, we're handling all that. And I will say that by and large, my operation has been, over the years, a very stingy one from a budgetary standpoint. We have not spent lavishly, and we don't intend to in the future.
Well, I'm gonna just say, what am I gonna say? I need time to think. I'm just gonna, so for me, I'm a little mad at myself now, and constituents should probably be mad at me too, because I don't feel like I know enough to make a really like cast a vote one way or another tonight that I feel comfortable And that's in part why I ask, is this something that goes away? Is it something that we can look at in 3 months and 6 months, especially knowing that things took a twist this evening that I'm sure folks weren't expecting. So I don't think I'd be fair. I wouldn't be being fair to myself and the people of Rappahannock, my colleagues, or to you, because normally I've done more homework on something before I cast a vote, and I can honestly tell you I have so many more questions that I don't know that I can get them all answered tonight.
Sure, and if you have questions that you think I can answer, I'll be glad to. If you want to email me those questions, I certainly will.
Oh, yeah. Like, no, imagine for me, tomorrow I'll be smiling and dialing and, have some questions,
So it sounds like you would like to just table this until next month?
Yeah, it wouldn't have to go 3 or 6
That'd be
months. I
great,
think there's
yeah.
some urgency because you want to advertise as soon as possible.
I'd like to, I've got a big one coming, and I'd like to get a little bit of help.
Yeah. So, I mean,
Yeah, I'll make a motion to table this till next month.
Yeah.
Is that what you were gonna?
I was just gonna say, I really appreciate your sentiments and I know you mean it when you say that because I know you're always well prepared, and so it means a lot to me, and probably to Art, how you just articulated that. I just want to make sure that we're not leaving him with this idea that it's now like this is long-term, we're going to deliberate for months and months. I think out of respect for Art and his office and his position as the chief law enforcement person in our county, that we need to get him an answer sooner rather than later. That's my only point.
I will be on vacation on July 7th when you meet next, so if I can appear by Zoom, if I can get my lovely wife to set that up, I will be glad to do so, but I won't be here, unfortunately, for this board's meeting that day.
It probably appears Kelly Goff.
What's
Yeah.
that? Yeah, I will, yeah.
Probably.
My name will be Kelly, yeah.
All right, we have
But you know who I am.
we have a motion to table this until next month. Do I have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
That's, I guess that whole discussion is what we would have had if the timing had been different from the.
We didn't know this was gonna happen until a
Right.
month ago,
Yeah.
so I can hardly complain after almost, how long, well, it's been, I don't know, 14 or 15 years, and I can hardly complain if we have to put it off another month.
Okay.
I understand completely, and I'll work on Christine in the meantime.
Like my mother used to say, it won't be as long as it has been.
I like that. Yes, and thank you all.
Thanks a lot, Art. Thanks for your patience.
I have a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 9:57.
Stay, Bonnie.